It's over. Wait, what's going on?
Miracle draw from Wesley So.
Oh my god, I'm gonna lose my mind.
MVL acing the opening. There's just no way. Oh, what an idea by MVL.
The power stretch.
That is evil.
Rooksy 2 immediately.
Oh my god. What in the world?
Rooksy 1, he's blundered his rook.
It is a mouse slip.
This is anyone's game. Oh, Jan blunders.
And this is over. Can you believe it?
Magnus Magic has done it again.
Magnus is now worse. Knight takes G2.
And it is a draw.
This is one of the craziest CCT games I've ever seen.
Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger, I'm a threat.
Checkmate and one coming in. These are the last.
Oh, and he's losing.
And Magnus cannot believe it. He's so mad at himself.
Wow, you never see this. Absolute hats off.
Almost 3 years ago, we saw a World Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Jan Nepomniachtchi, and the fateful Game 6, where finally the challenger's resolve was broken. Magnus Carlsen breaking through after over 8 hours of play, over 130 moves. What a match that was, and we're going to see a rematch today. These two great warriors, these two gladiators, have so much experience with each other, friends turned rivals, and they'll be battling out today in the CrunchLabs Masters, part of the Champions Chess Tour. I'm David Howell. I'll be your host today, and I'm joined by the wonderful, the commentator, speed chess extraordinaire, Daniel Naroditsky. Daniel, it's great to have you with me. How excited are you about today?
The wonderful, I mean, David, the compliments are coming fast and furious. It's great to be here for another day of CrunchLabs action. Man, crunch, that's the sound that Magnus Carlsen has been making when he's defeated Jan Nepomniachtchi thus far across every format and across every time control. But hey, you can't do it. You just get up and try the next time. Well, the next time has arrived, and it's time for Jan Nepomniachtchi to turn that narrative on its head, David.
That's right. Huge games ahead for both players. Jan Nepomniachtchi needs to overcome Magnus Carlsen if he wants to stay in the tournament. And that's only the appetizer today. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is in the grand final. He will not be in action today. He will be awaiting the winner of the losers bracket. And here we go. We start with Magnus Carlsen against Jan Nepomniachtchi. And that's just the warm-up. The winner will play Alireza Firouzja later today for a chance at Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in the grand final. So much on the line. The players on their last lives here, Dania. What are you expecting from today's action?
Well, listen, if you're Magnus Carlsen, first of all, you have a chip on your shoulder. You've lost to MVL, and he obviously lost 2 matches in a row to Alireza Firouzja, David, in the last CCT match. Now the shoe is on the other foot, and now Magnus Carlsen has a chance to rise up from the losers bracket, put himself in the shoes of Alireza Firouzja, but he's not there yet. Right now, he's got 1 match. It's a best of 2. The margin for error is exactly nil. We know that from yesterday's matches. He's got to win this 1 match, and he's got to take this 1 step at a time. There is no other way to do it if you're in the losers bracket. You've got a long journey of 1,000,000 miles, but it starts with a single move.
That's right. The players will be taking it move by move, step by step, game by game. And let's break down the probabilities, at least according to ratings, according to current form, of all of the players still remaining in the Division 1 of the CrunchLabs Masters. And here we see Dania, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, a huge favorite. He still has both of his lives. He still is the big boss waiting in that grand final. But what do you make of the other numbers we see on our screen here? Magnus Carlsen estimated at 19.2% chance of winning, but his first opponent today, Jan Nepomniachtchi, only 4%. Is that too low?
Listen, David, I think you're overestimating my mathematical prowess. Just a couple of days ago, I learned that 5% of 20 is the same thing as 20% of 5. I actually learned that a couple of days ago. Fun little fact. But wow. Those are some pretty bold numbers in favor of MVL. And yes, being in the winner's bracket is a massive advantage. You just cannot emphasize enough how difficult it is to win 2 matches in a row against the same opponent, and how fatigued the player coming from the loser's bracket is going to be. How many trials and tribulations that player will have had to face just in order to get another chance at the ultimate crown. And those trials and tribulations, well, they're about to begin for Magnus Carlsen. Both players today in our first match, David, they've got a chip on their shoulder. They're hungry. Jan, He had that incredible plan. He wants to recapture that energy, that momentum that propelled him to the #1 spot in the qualifier. But that feels like it was ages ago.
It does. It feels like a lifetime ago, and the players have been on a real journey since then. I'm still trying to get over that kind of maths magic that you just revealed to me there. I'm rethinking my whole life now, Dania. But let's look at some new numbers as we check out the players head to head. You referred to it there, and this is just Rapid Chess online and over the board. But Magnus, a huge lead, 24 wins to 10, including, if we look below, their recent online meetings just a few days back. Magnus defeated Jan, pushed him down to the losers bracket by winning 3-0. Really one-sided stuff there. Dania, it's chip on the shoulder, as you mentioned. It's kind of how do you beat the world #1, especially when you've had so much experience and so much lack of success, I've got to say, for Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Well, I feel like that's a mantra which has been repeated throughout the CrunchLabs Masters as we take a look at some more interesting stats. That average accuracy is just insane. I wake up with that question at the top of my mind. How do I defeat Magnus Carlsen? Still haven't arrived at an answer, and neither have the players who do defeat Magnus Carlsen in a match. MVL was asked when he beat Magnus a couple of days ago. He had no idea. You just have to play the match of your life, and there is no formula. There is no ready-made algorithm. There is no home cooking. You just have to show up, play inspired chess, and exploit Magnus's mistakes. Wesley had a chance yesterday. He wasn't up to the task. Well, will Jan Nepomniachtchi fare any differently?
Yeah, a really revealing interview there from Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, as you mentioned. He said sometimes you just have to wait and take advantage of these really weird tactics that Magnus occasionally misses, occasionally being the key word. But let's check out the big boss himself, the champion of the Champions Chess Tour over the last few years. He just seems unbeatable almost. He did, however, Dania, lose to Alireza Firouzja in the previous Champions Chess Tour event in the Chess.com Classic, so not totally invincible Magnus Carlsen. That being said, he's won every single CCT final since it began during the pandemic in 2020, and he's never finished below third in the current format. That is consistency.
It is, I think, the ultimate measure of excellence that whenever Magnus does not win a tournament, whenever he starts badly in a tournament, the rumors start swirling about Magnus Carlsen being washed. What does that tell you? That tells you that people are this used to Magnus Carlsen winning essentially every tournament that he's played in, and for very good reason. The guy defended his world champion title for 10 years. He's won just about every tournament under the sun. He is the man to beat. And when you defeat Magnus Carlsen in a match or in a single game, you've made your tournament. And that says all that we need to know about the Norwegians' superiority over the chess world.
That's right. And if Nepomniachtchi is going to win, then he'll have to do it in a best of 2 game match. This is now the losers bracket. It will be throughout today. So we'll stick with this 2 game format, and it's 10 minutes on the clock. They gain 2 seconds after every move, the players, and 1.5 points wins the match. However, we may well see Armageddon if the score is 1-1, and the loser of this first match will be eliminated in 4th place. So that could potentially be Magnus Carlsen's lowest ever finish in the current format of the Champions Chess Tour. But the winner will guarantee at least 3rd, move on to the losers final. So that's what's at stake right now. That's the rules we'll be playing under, Dania. And what are you expecting in the first games of the match as the players, it looks like they're getting ready now, and they'll be good to go in a couple of minutes.
Wait, you said that's at stake. So you're telling me you're going to cook me a steak while they play? I'm going to watch Magnus Carlsen play and eat a steak at the same time? That sounds tremendous. But I'll take the just Magnus Carlsen and Jan Nepomniachtchi part, and I'll get the steak later. Man, Jan is a mercurial guy. He's a mercurial player. You never know what version of Jan Nepomniachtchi is going to show up on any given day. And not just in terms of his playing strength, but also in terms of his style. He is universal, but in an unconventional way. He can play e4, d4. He can play extremely tactical like he did in the play-in and very fast. Or he can play positionally and channel his inner Grishuk. I've seen all different kinds of Jan Nepomniachtchis, and I've never seen that particular Jan Nepomniachtchi. His clothing choices seem pretty cool too. Orange yesterday, a nice little hoodie today. We'll see. We'll see what kind of magic he's brewed in his laboratory.
Yeah, and he's back to his standard background. I believe he's back home, Jan Nepomniachtchi, after taking a trip to... What's up, Dania?
Sorry, I'm just looking at Magnus. Magnus is intently concentrating on Just making sure everything is straight. Sorry, please continue.
I thought you were laughing at the mess on his bed behind him. We can see the stack of clothes.
That I'm
the
used
pile
to.
of clothes there.
I think all of us are used to that, aren't we? If there wasn't a mess behind him, either on the bed or on the couch, if there wasn't laundry that was not folded, then it wouldn't be Magnus Carlsen's setup.
That's true. I mean, it's not just him. It's all chess players. We tend to live out of suitcases. We don't tend to be the best at doing our laundry, as Magnus admitted in a lie detector test to me a while ago. But either way, the players, they have their different routines. And it's what works for him, clearly.
Listen, that's what a dryer is for. That's what a bed is for. And the way I position my camera, you just see my bookshelf, which looks okay. But don't ever make me show you the, 3 inches to the left, 3 inches to the right. And you do not want to see any part of that as Magnus Carlsen and Jan Nepomniachtchi assume their seats, the final preparations being made. It's been a sinuous journey for Jan Nepomniachtchi with some very clearly defined ups and downs thus far in the CrunchLabs Masters, David.
That's right. And I
think we
the
might have
CrunchLabs Masters.
We might have lost David there briefly. We'll get him back in due course. But here we have Jan Nepomniachtchi's journey to the losers semifinal. David, you are back after a long sabbatical. How was your vacation? Oh, I'm not hearing David yet. Maybe the chat is, though.
Here we go. I'm back, Daniel.
There we
go. Sorry about that. My bad tech issues. But rather me than the players, right? And you mentioned Nepomniachtchi, and it's been a ride for him. But the one kind of slip up was against Magnus Carlsen a few days ago. He needs to make amends, and we're off. Daniel, a Catalan.
A Catalan, and it took me a second to realize that Jan is actually black. I've pointed this out before. Jan likes to play the Catalan with the white pieces in rapid time controls. That's how he did so well in the RCC, the Rapid Chess Championship. Remember that? Jan, okay, he takes on c4, David. This is, of course, one of the myriad main lines in the Catalan, and a6. Now the big choice for white, and a4 is all the rage.
That's right. A4 stops black from expanding on the queen side. The World Championship match in 2021, we referenced it. It might feel like an eternity ago now. 3 years is a long, long time in the chess world. But the Catalan was one of the main battlegrounds there, Dania. And it kind of caused Magnus to turn away from 1d4 in the latter rounds, where he already had the lead. He didn't necessarily want to enter these theoretical waters, but solid stuff for black. We've seen a trade of pieces, but essentially white has a bit more space, but black has no weaknesses.
Now, I'm positive that this position has occurred dozens of times, but theory develops a little bit differently in lines like these, as opposed to, let's say, a mainline Najdorf, because as I like to put it, the price of a move is not that high. Right? Black has maybe 3 or 4 options that approximately maintain the same evaluation, but I'm sure that there is a most accurate way to play. And the question I always have is, does black want to play a5? Does black want to prevent white from playing a5? Is the a5 square important at all? Jan puts his queen on b8. Is he preparing b5 at some point?
I mean, it's a mystery to me. I thought I knew everything, or not everything, but I thought I knew enough about this opening to be able to give a good kind of breakdown of where the pieces should go. But I haven't seen a queen on b8 in this variation before, Dania. And like you said, price of a move isn't that high, so you can probably get away with such fancy kind of creativity here. But mystery. It's a mystery. It might look like genius in a few moves. Maybe he's going to play like a5, queen a7, queen a6. But for now,
you know what they say: the line between genius and something is very thin. I never know how that quote goes. But maybe this is Jan's point, that he's trying to keep Magnus guessing. Another idea: rook c8, and then dropping the bishop back. Maybe he'll go c7, c5. Black has a lot of potential pawn breaks on the queen side. And Magnus is taking a pretty long think here. So he's clearly identified this as a potential critical moment. Does that mean he's cooking up a committal decision along the lines of knight e5? Will he revert to a quote-unquote normal move? There's our answer, b4 by Magnus. Anything but normal in the context of the Catalan. Going for the queenside minority attack.
Yeah, a thematic idea in queen's pawn openings in general, but like you said, black normally does prevent this. Black doesn't allow white to expand. And here we see another trade of pieces. So it's actually opposite color bishops. White has a light square bishop, which is somewhat blunted now with this pawn structure. Black has the dark square bishop, but minority attack. I think I've just seen too many classic games, Danya, with white breaking through with b5. I've been traumatized. Yeah. I hate this structure for black.
And then before you know it, black is an isolated weak pawn on c6, and then white is a knight on e5, and white is a rook on c1. And that reminds me of a game I watched between Karpov and Vlastimil Jansa in the 1970s. But I only half joke because in the 60s and 70s, you had tons and tons of these successful minority attacks that kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of queen's pawn opening theory, as you're pointing out. But look at Jan just blitzing out, bulleting out his moves, and possibly to his detriment, because he might end up in one of those nasty positional binds. Is he underestimating the danger here, David, in your opinion?
I think possibly. Maybe against anyone else in the world, you could get away with this type of thing. But against Magnus, you give him a stable position with minimal risk where he can just massage the position and go for this one big weakness that now has been fixed on c6, as you predicted. I mean, this is a nightmare against Magnus specifically, but in general, it's just so passive. You're begging for a draw here with black, and that's if things go really well. You're highlighting the c6 where knight e5 is an autopilot move, queen b7 a threat. Just, I hate it, I've got to say, for Jan Nepomniachtchi. I'm really shocked the eval bar's roughly in the middle, because he needs to be so accurate already here just to hold the balance.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly a nasty position. Now Jan slows down, but you get the sense that he went 100 miles an hour into this position so enthusiastically. Queen b8, quickly traded off the bishops, allowing b5. You had the sense that everything was under control, everything was planned. But in fact, I don't think anything was planned. And I think Jan is slowly starting to realize that he's got a long and arduous defensive task ahead of him, unless he can potentially engineer a quick c5 pawn break, which Magnus is not going to allow on Jan's terms. I mean, even if black plays c5 and trades off the rooks, white still has a symbolic advantage. But I think that this is the lesser evil for Nepo.
Mm-hmm. He's going for that plan, rook to c8, not a pure passive defensive move there. He wants to play c5 and simplify the equation. Yeah, I think he needed to do this. Otherwise, I was going to be even harsher on black's position there. I was about to say, like, why don't I get these positions against these 2800s ever? But Magnus, yes, he's got a symbolic advantage. It might not be more. The top players, they're very good at their defensive work these days. And this could well be one of those types of positions where in World Championship matches, practice games, he's been playing these out with his seconds, and he's been thinking, okay, it's sad, but I am going to make a draw no matter what, even if I have to suffer for a bit, Danya. And a draw with black wouldn't be a bad result at all for Nepomniachtchi. So, yeah, critical moments. Magnus does need to apply some pressure in the next few moves.
Mm-hmm. And in a certain sense, the arc of this game reminds me a little bit of the first match game between Carlsen and Wesley yesterday, where Magnus also had a seemingly risk-free position. Now, there was a lot more meat on the bone, and eventually things turned around, and even Wesley was winning for a brief instant, then Magnus was winning again. That game went completely haywire in its final stages, but I don't see that happening here. Magnus still has 6 minutes on the clock. I think the question he's posing to himself is, first of all, do I want to stop c5 at all costs? And if the answer is yes, how do I do that? Because he can go bishop h3, he can play a move like queen b7, but those are one-move threats. Those don't really substantively prevent black from pushing c5. The rook can just land on c7. The king has a nice Luft square on h7, so there's no problems with a back-rank mate, David. Can you put a rook on c5? Also not a serious solution. That's just putting a band-aid over the problem. Black's going to chase that rook out in an instant by landing a knight on e4.
Yeah, you know the move I would love to play, Danya? I would love to play knight d3 for white, but you're just one move behind. You can't legally play that move yet. If you could fix a knight there. Oh, even better. If you could get a knight to blockade that black weakness on c6, then I think it's just long-term game over. But unfortunately, I don't really see a way, as you mentioned, to other than those band-aid solutions, I don't really see a way to kind of clamp down permanently right now for Magnus. And you referenced that game against Wesley. So yesterday, I was lurking. I was watching you guys, you and Tanya, the whole time. And that one really exploded. I'm hopeful that happens here. But if c5 happens, it's maybe less likely that this game really becomes wild.
Yeah, and I think Jan's time management seems to be justified. This has been his strategy throughout the entire CCT. He's played fast, even by Jan standards. In some of the play-in games that Tanya and I commentated, he would have 8 minutes. He had over 10 minutes at some point against Benjamin Bach in a game that he won entirely on opening preparation, and an opening that I haven't seen since like the 17th century. So Jan has been full of surprises, and the confidence with which he's played this opening and early middle game stage has been a pleasant surprise. But he's going to go c5. I think he's fully confident in his ability to hold a draw pretty comfortably here. And now he's 4 minutes up on the clock as well.
Yeah, and the viewers at home might be wondering why c5 is such a big deal. It will just result in a series of trades, and Black will still be left with one weakness, the pawn on d5. But look at Magnus on the camera. He looks a bit frustrated because one weakness will not be enough, especially if the rooks come off, especially due to the configuration of opposite color bishops. Long term, even if Black is left with an isolated queen's pawn, even if Black loses that isolated queen's pawn long term and more pieces come off the board, a draw, yeah, looks very likely at this top level. I think Magnus is struggling just as much as we were to find any permanent solutions.
He's pulling an Alireza. He's now down to 5 minutes on the clock. It was a shocking moment yesterday. Hopefully people who were watching when Alireza, in a must-win situation against MVL, burned literally all of his time before even entering the middle game. Now, Magnus is obviously not doing that. He's trying to find the best way to put any sort of pressure on Jan. Even if it doesn't result in victory, at least make the guy tired, make the guy sweat for it. 91 is on the board. A sip of tea and a sip of C. No, bad. C5, I think, will happen next. And I'm just going to stop digging myself into a hole because I am digging furiously.
I was waiting for those rhymes, those puns to come out, Dania. I knew it was a matter of time, just as it was a matter of time for Magnus to make his move. The one difference from his position to Alireza Firouzja's positions yesterday is the fact that this one is under control. It's stable. So even if Magnus goes down to 5 seconds, he'll be able to bail out with a draw. Worst comes to the worst. Firouzja yesterday, that was self-destructive, the way he was using the clock. But knight e1, a good move, and surely it's c5. It's time for that c to part and c5 to appear on the board.
Now, well, the Sicilian better late than never. I'd prefer it on move 1, but move 22 is also sufficient. There are some other candidate moves that Jan might be considering. Queen a3 is an attempt to trigger an exchange of queens, and if the queens are off the board, then and Queen a3 is on the board, and I actually really like that move. You trade queens. Funnily enough, that bishop on a3 has a sort of halo surrounding it because white can't really move the rook up to c3. The bishop will just drop back to b4. I'll show this on the board. If Magnus trades on a3, he has a hard time getting this bishop off his back. If he plays rook c3, you walk right into bishop b4. You give Black another tempo, and Black can use this tempo to play c5. So this is not a serious winning attempt. Magnus, he says, not so fast. Hold your horses. Literally hold your horses. He brings his queen back to its initial square. And once again, the question for Jan, is now the time for c5, or does he keep procrastinating?
Yeah, procrastination is a sin. As I was told when I was young, you cannot do nothing. That's the recipe for disaster in chess. So I would say c5.
And not just in chess.
Not just in chess, you're right. Although chess players, we do have a tendency in life to procrastinate slightly. But okay, let's leave that for our therapy sessions, Dania. Right now, c5. I say he goes for it. I say, why not? I don't see anything else.
Okay, so let's try to look at it concretely. c5, what could Jan be afraid of? What if I play d takes c5, I assume you take back with the rook, and then I slide my rook over to a1, trying to create some awkwardness, maybe a timely check on a8, not sure where that leads. Maybe you go queen b1 and cover the escape square.
Ooh,
but okay.
Sneaky. Yeah, I like it. I think all of us would still prefer white, but just the thought of allowing a white knight to d3 and preventing this pawn break, I mean, the long-term suffering, you kind of want to solve your problems tactically. I think that's Jan Nepomniachtchi's style as well. I like this queen c3 move. So any check there on the back rank would have been met by a rook block. But Magnus is the one now hitting with tempo. He gains time against the black rook. The white knight will land on f4. If he wins that isolated queen's pawn with all pieces still on the board, Dania, then there's serious chances for Magnus. Jan needs pieces off. He needs to trade as soon as possible.
Exactly. He was trying to find a way to check off all the boxes, not just to win the d5 pawn, but as you're saying, to do it while keeping, especially the queens on the board. I think he would be fine with just queens and bishops. As we like to say, opposite colored bishops, drawish tendencies, yes. Does it guarantee a draw? Absolutely not. And this is why we see Jan taking some extraordinary measures, confidently sacrificing the pawn, but doing so on his own terms or not. I think he simply blundered knight e2.
Wow, and you saw that shake of the head by Jan. Suddenly he leans forward again. He was relaxing maybe a bit too soon. Knight e2 keeps white's pawn structure nice and harmonious, all intact, all connected, and will win the pawn next move. And I don't think you can even force the queens off. That's the problem. He would love a queen exchange, even at the cost of this pawn, but Dania,
I think
white...
he is.
Oh, he does. Oh, wait, sorry.
Now the knights remain on the board. But now the knights remain on the board.
Okay, that's the important point. I'll pretend that's what I meant.
That's what you meant, of course.
Exactly.
And, we've never blundered pieces before. As commentators, we're flawless.
Exactly. We are human sometimes. So knight on d4, maybe leaping to c6, f5, some nice squares. There's only one real weakness in black's camp. That's this pawn on f7 on the light square. If white can somehow coordinate to attack it, rook on the 7th rank, a bishop maybe repositioning on a nice diagonal right now, but an empty diagonal. If it can target the f7 pawn, maybe chances. This is going to be a lot of suffering, Dania, for the next 50 moves for Jan.
Yeah, sounds like a great way to start my Monday. You have a pawn down endgame against the greatest endgame player of all time, which he can push forever. I think Jan should be able to hold this given his time advantage. He's got that nice 3-minute cushion, but we know how good Magnus is at converting positions like these, and he doesn't convert them in 5 moves. He usually doesn't convert them in 10. Converting a position like this is a matter of posing problems consistently over the course of a long period of time, forcing your opponent to fritter away his time advantage, and eventually capitalizing on a blunder. So this is going to take some incredible finesse from Magnus. I believe in Jan's defensive prowess, but remember, he blundered the move knight e2. He didn't sign up for this, so he's got to do that psychological work of coming to terms with the fact that he's going to be defending this for God knows how many moves.
Yeah, maybe 136 moves, just like that Game 6 of the World Championship match. I just want to mention their accuracy. This is how tough chess can be. You've kind of put up an accuracy of 97.7, as Jan has here, but you're pawn down and you're about to suffer for the rest of the game just to try and make a draw. Magnus here, slightly more accurate, but also the one having more fun as he gives a check and forces black's king to make a decision. I really think he's going to be able to zone in on the f7 pawn at some point in the near future. Dania, self-pin. That's ugly.
Self-pin, what does that tell us? I think it tells us Jan was seriously worried about the prospect of an exchange on e7. And Magnus actually could have grabbed that bishop a move previously. I actually lost an endgame exactly like this. Rook bishop in 4 versus rook knight in 3 in a classical game against a Latin American GM, Axel Bachmann. I remember it clearly. And I felt when we got into that endgame that it was a dead draw, but you feel that way in a lot of these endgames, and then very quickly you realize that the defensive task is a lot more difficult than it appears at first sight. So Jan keeps the pieces as they are. He unpins the bishop, and he achieves kind of the perfect pawn setup here with this nice little pawn chain and a nicely protected set of minor pieces by the king. Very harmonious.
Yeah, really harmonious. And it might look counterintuitive for some of the viewers at home, black putting pawns on light squares, the squares they can be attacked by white's bishop. But actually in a lot of pawn down endgames, when it's just one side that you're focusing on, so here it's just pawns on the king side, by planting pawns on the squares that Jan has put them, you don't allow the opponent to step forward without making exchanges. So it's incredibly hard here for white to ever create a passed pawn. So white's going to have to win this tactically or kind of methodically by attacking the base of the pawn chain, but that's going to be a real uphill struggle. And it's fascinating, Dania, like when I was making this chessable course with Magnus about grinding, we literally had one whole chapter pretty much on 4 versus 3 endgames, and he was like, okay, opposite color bishops, easy draw if it's just rooks. Same color bishops, and he broke down all the piece configurations, even this one. So he said it should be a draw with best play, shouldn't be too painful even. But yeah, we'll wait to see whether he can break down what Black hopes is a fortress right now.
And look at his clock. Magnus is down to 20 seconds. He's being very cavalier about his time. Now, we remind people just joining, there's a 2-second increment. So that's enough to keep your clock stable, but it might not be enough to capitalize on a tactical opportunity if it manifests itself suddenly. Jan is adopting a waiting strategy. Holding pattern, rook d7, rook c7, bishop d6, bishop f8. He's got a bunch of these waiting moves. So it's not a question of if, but a question of when Magnus tries to change the structure on the king side and push Jan's pieces back, thereby trying to create tactical opportunities. He starts with the e-pawn, David, and that's actually a really nasty move to face because you can imagine this pawn landing on e5. The knight is pushed away already. Then maybe you start sinking your teeth into the d5 square. But look at how accurately Jan is defending. This is fantastic defensive play.
Yeah, so calm, retreating with the Black Knight just to go and try and force this exchange of those horses there. And those knights are off the board, and the rooks as well.
It's that easy to draw Magnus in a pawn down endgame. Why didn't anybody tell me this sooner?
Wow, and Magnus doesn't even try. Look at the camera, Daniel. Magnus is so frustrated with himself, but ice cold defense there from Jan Nepomniachtchi, really impressive. Just 2 moves ago, we said he's going to suffer, but no, knights off the board, rooks off the board, opposite color bishops. Who cares if it's an extra pawn? We have the first result of the day.
Wow, and Jan has definitely earned another cup of tea. But he'll need it because they've got a winner-go-home game coming right up. David, I was gearing up for a 100-plus move game. I was absolutely sure that this would drag on, and I thought that Jan would hold a draw eventually, but it just seemed like Magnus wasn't quite in his element, in his comfort zone, because we're so used to him applying so much pressure in these pawn-up positions. Still, not to overstate the case, Magnus was in the driver's seat. I don't think he's too opposed to the way that the game went.
He was in the driver's seat, he was in the gaming chair, he was ready to fight Magnus Carlsen, but that touch screen, we saw him play a great Armageddon yesterday against Wesley So, but today it felt like the speed wasn't there again, Danya, maybe just a slow starter as Magnus occasionally is, and slow in terms of the clock. He still played a great chess game, but he would have been able to apply more pressure with more time. I think it was a bit of kind of just impatience pushing that e-pawn, allowing all of those exchanges. But what do you feel the critical moments were in that relatively balanced draw in the end?
Yeah, it can be hard to identify, first of all, exactly when things went wrong, insofar as they did go wrong for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Obviously, he blundered a pawn. Well, not really. He tried to give it away, but he didn't give it away in the way that he wanted to. The game started off as a Catalan. We're used to seeing Jan play this with white in rapid chess, but he's had ample experience from the black side as well. Very, very solid line essayed by Nepo here. It's a pretty theoretical position. He plays slightly peculiar move, queen b8, which is followed by what seems to be a peculiar response before, but it starts making complete sense. Magnus is gearing up for a typical classic minority attack. This allows him to stabilize a nice, very small, but very stable advantage. That pawn on c6 is a serious weakness, and Jan addresses the problem immediately without delay. He plays rook c8, preparing the pawn break c5. This is what the battle kind of revolves around, as Magnus positions his pieces so that he will be prepared when the center opens up. He switches his attention over to the d5 pawn, which he now starts to surround. And when Jan tries to give it away on his own terms, he ends up giving it away on Magnus's terms as the knight drops back to e2. We always talk about retreating knight moves and how hard they are to spot. It's not just a cliche. So Magnus secures the pawn. He bags the pawn while keeping most of the pieces on the board. And yet, kudos, hats off to Jan Nepomniachtchi. He finds the perfect defensive setup with all of his minor pieces protected, his pawns on perfect squares, and Magnus simply is unable to create any serious chances for the rest of the game. With just a couple seconds on the clock, Magnus pushes his e-pawn up the board, an attempt to create tactical intrigue. It fails miserably, knight e7, get the knights off the board, and immediately thereafter, get the rooks off the board and get any winning chances off the board. Fantastic defensive effort by Jan. Once he played d4 and blundered the pawn, I thought that things might go south. Nope. Jan's been confident this entire tournament. Good first game, get his feet under him, and he's got the white pieces and a chance to put some serious pressure on Magnus Carlsen in the second game, David.
That's right. Great breakdown there, Danya. And just fantastic foundation now for Jan Nepomniachtchi to go into this next game with confidence, to put pressure on Magnus Carlsen. That's classical chess wisdom, right? You hold, you're solid with black, even if you have to suffer a little bit, you make that draw, and you have white in the final game. there you push, there you choose the battleground and try to take your chances. And Jan's looking calm. He's looking collected.
Looking collected, maybe thinking about all the stuff that he did last night. It was Sunday night, but today's Monday. Time to get back on the grind. They're back in their office, and their office is the chessboard. But with the white pieces, you really want to approach this game ambitiously, because when did Magnus make his money in the match against Wesley? It was in the Armageddon. Magnus is generally unstoppable in Armageddons. Of course, he lost to MVL in the winner's bracket in an Armageddon, but I really feel like Jan has to try to win this game. I think if it gets to an Armageddon, Magnus is the heavy favorite, David. I just have a hunch.
That's right. I was commentating on Norway Chess, and I think there Magnus has won something like 29 out of 35 Armageddons against world-class opposition. He is the Armageddon king, even if occasionally he has these accidents. So stats-wise, probability-wise, this might be Jan's best chance. I fully agree.
Okay, E4 or D4? Which Jan Nepomniachtchi will we get today?
I vote E4. How about yourself?
E4, absolutely. E4 all the way. It's hard to pose problems against Magnus in the opening. You're probably not going to succeed. But hey, in the play-in, Jan demonstrated some very exciting opening preparation. We know that he likes to uncork the occasional King's Gambit, the occasional Grand Prix attack. So he's got a little bit of that pizzazz in his opening repertoire. He waits for me to say all of that. And of course, starts the game by pushing his queen's pawn. Okay,
wow,
speaking of pizzazz.
Fruity. Danya, B6, aiming for Queen's Indian type positions, fianchettoing that bishop, but a rare guest at the top level and has a bit of a dubious reputation, unless I'm mistaken.
And I never know what to call this opening. I think informally, I've started referring to it as the hyper-accelerated Queen's Indian, which sounds a lot fancier than it is. And actually, I don't think F3 is considered to be the topical move. And it's precisely because of Knight C6. I actually already don't like the way this is going for Jan. I know I'm jumping the gun here, but just really quickly, David, I feel like Knight C3, Bishop B7, and Queen C2 is the sort of prescribed method for a small advantage. And here, typically, Black plays this Grunfeld style with D5, but I've looked at this position a little bit. I think White does have an advantage. The problem with the move F3, which is the sort of traditional recommendation, is that after E5, Magnus gets exactly what he wants. Very unbalanced, cagey position where it's very easy for White to get overextended in the center and underdeveloped.
Yeah, I fully agree. I've also looked at this opening a bit. I kind of play it as one of my main weapons in Blitz. Don't tell anyone, just in case they prepare. Okay. But the main problem is that Knight C3, Queen C2 line, as you mentioned there for White. So Jan may be less familiar than Magnus with some of the nuances, and this is maybe the one thing. It looks like a King's Indian, the pawn structure, but Black's dark squared bishop does get out. He trades off his problem piece here, Danya, and I mean, space, we're taught to value its importance, but with this exchange of bishops, maybe less valuable than it is in some of those other kind of sister openings.
Yeah, I mean, and not just humans are taught to value it, but computers, they love the space advantage. And the further back in time you go, the more drastically the computer evaluated a position like this in White's favor. If you turned on, Fritz 3.2 in the year 2005, you would get an assessment of like plus 1.7. Now, the computer is far more level-headed, and it understands, insofar as the computer can understand, that Black has some compensatory factors. The bishop on F1 doesn't have a good home. It's locked in by its own pawn chain. Black has a very, very nasty set of pawn breaks that he can set off like a chain reaction, particularly if White castles queenside. And this, I think, is why this type of opening is so good, David, in a fast time control. Black possesses the pawn breaks. They can be very unpleasant, and it can be kind of hard to determine where to hide your king if you're Jan. My vote is the king side.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think the safer side is the king side, that's for sure. It depends on Jan Nepomniachtchi's mood. Often in the kind of King's Indian with this type of pawn structure, you can get away with castling queenside. It can be hard for Black to fully break open the queenside flank while other stuff is going on the other side of the board. But yeah, I would say in the match situation, you don't necessarily want to kind of play a risky move like that unless you have something up your sleeve. And I mean, you mentioned Fritz 3.2, Danya. I mean, don't diss it. I once prepared kind of a forced winning variation with it against an IM. I think that was my proudest moment as a youngster. The first time I ever used a computer, and it worked to perfection. So the evaluations might have been slightly skewed. I might have been slightly biased there, but computers leading the way.
Oh, man. I still remember when the chess engine Houdini came out, and Most people in the chat will be thinking, wait, Houdini, like Harry Houdini, the magician? No, there was a chess engine. This is like Stockfish before Stockfish, called Houdini, and it was all the rage. And when Houdini came out, it was so much stronger than Fritz and Ripka, as we see Magnus preparing the b5 pawn break, showing that he means business on the queen side. I thought that there was no way a chess engine would ever be developed that would give recommendations that even came anywhere near the level of Houdini. Now, if you pit Houdini against Stockfish, let's not talk about what's going to happen. It's like my blitz matches against Magnus, better left in the past. Queen to b8. This move, I've seen it before.
Yeah, again, maybe taking a leaf out of Jan Nepomniachtchi's book in the last encounter. This time, maybe equally dubious, but less mysterious, I would say, at least, Dania. He wants to prepare b5 but at any cost. Maybe even slide his queen to a7 and then play ideas like b5 later. But why could this be a mistake? Is it something concrete, do you feel, or just strategically? Is he playing for a break that he should be resisting?
Well, the only sort of concrete move that I see here for white is bishop takes c5, and this has been on the table for a while. This is a common situation where you have tension between bishops, right? You get this in the London system, for example, and neither side wants to budge. Now the computer is saying Magnus should take the opportunity to trade on e3. The one big advantage of taking on c5 for Jan would have been that the b pawn would have likely recaptured, leaving black essentially without any effective queenside pawn breaks. Now, I feel like Magnus's idea is going to work like a charm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes doubled pawns can be great in terms of controlling the center, but you do lose a lot of flexibility if pawns are doubled, tripled, isolated, all of that. So, okay, black castles. We're yet to see a decision from Jan. Will he take that as a red rag to a bull and say, okay, I'm going to go on the king side. I'm going to try and attack that black king now, since white hasn't committed. Does look a bit risky, a bit double-edged, but slightly tempting in a rapid game. Or does Jan just castle kingside and say, okay, let's chill? Still keeping his options open.
Man, the tactical alarms in my head would be ringing if I were white and if I were black. If I were white, I'd be panicking about Magnus just mating me on the queen side. Even though white's king isn't on the queen side, proverbially mating me. And I would be preparing g4 as fast as I can get it done. Maybe he could have played it on the previous move, like you suggested. But of course, I'm exaggerating slightly. And it's not like after b5, white's position evaporates. In fact, you have several ways to respond to b5. You can play c5. You can play b3. And it's interesting that Jan is keeping his king in the middle of the board for the time being. Sometimes when you're attacking on the king side and the queen side is exploding, by process of elimination, David, there just aren't that many options. And the center might be the safest place for the white king to be, relatively speaking, as this game unfolds.
Yeah, often one strategy in these types of positions, you wait for your opponent to attack. For example, if Magnus now starts playing with b5, maybe Jan will say, okay, I'll laugh at you, and after a decision on that side with the pawn tension, then I'll castle kingside. It looks like you're playing on the wrong side of the board. Magnus does go for it. I was going to say the other strategy is just to wait and just keep waiting, keep improving your pieces until your opponent's made a decision and then lash out. But yeah, this is what I felt was his plan, Jan Nepomniachtchi, and a bit of a frown on the camera. He does trade a set of pawns and blockades with the white knight. This is a really now kind of nice long-term bind for white, but Magnus is going to have to lash out dynamically, energetically with c6 or c5 in the next move before he gets properly stuck with those breaks.
And white's position may seem all nice and tidy and cozy as long as there's a pawn on d5 and as long as the center is closed and clearly defined. As soon as the as the pawns start falling and as soon as things start exploding in the center, white's kind of latent weaknesses might start to reveal themselves. Black's next move is c6 or c5. In the event of an en passant, David, I think the weakness of the d5 square is a very easy factor to overestimate. And it might just not be easy to exploit for white, given all of the other items on his priority list. He's got to figure out where he's putting his king. It almost feels like g4 has lost a lot of its luster. And again, I don't want to succumb here to the Magnus effect and make an unobjective evaluation, but practically it feels like this entire game, Magnus has had the easier moves. He's had the more clearly defined plans. And I feel like this is a big, big critical moment. Can Jan find a suitable setup? Can he find a suitable answer to the clear positional threat of c6?
Yeah, you beat me to it. I was about to ask you, Dania, who you would prefer, at least in practical terms, because probably objectively it's balanced. But okay, you're picking black here, especially just ease of plan, especially with the time now situation, I guess. I'll say I still like White's chances long term, but trend of the game, not necessarily his friend right now. So critical moments, Jan is doing a Magnus and tanking, thinking for a long, long time. He's got a castle at some point, surely.
Yeah, and maybe now's the time. I mean, I would be terrified of the center opening up. I would briefly consider castling queenside. I would reject it, go running to the other side of the board, and there we go. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, en passant did indeed occur. And now, as you mentioned, the d5 square could have been occupied by a white knight, but the d4 square would have been an outpost for black. And break it open. b4, it's too late. There we go. This is all about Magnus now, minority attack.
Look how many dividends this queen on b8 is yielding. It wasn't just b5 that he was preparing. Now the pawn inches forward to b4. The line between genius and insanity, amazingness and stupidity, however you want to phrase it, Magnus's pieces always seem to end up in the right place at the right time. And this queen, definitely the star of the show. Queen takes b4, I assume will happen. Maybe Magnus briefly considering whether to flick in a trade of rooks, but why? What's the point of that? He wants to keep pieces on the board. It's Jan who wants to liquidate here because his king is not safe. His kingside pawns are kind of tender. And I like the way that Jan has stabilized the situation, preventing d5 and saying, wait a second, you've got a weakness too.
Yeah, it's like a mirror image almost, this game compared to the last one. Again, Magnus gets a minority attack, kind of isolates an opponent's pawn. Again, Jan is going to damage limitation mode, shaking his head there on the camera, but he should still be able to hold. It might come down to pawns on just one flank yet again. But he's stable enough. Not pleasant for White, just like the last game, but still tenable. So yeah, Magnus doing the running, it feels like, Daniel, in these first two games.
Yeah, but Jan is just saying, okay, as long as I can hold it, still have a point on the cross table, it still means we get into an Armageddon, and it still means that absolutely anything can happen. So, man, I am very much feeling deja vu. It's a very similar situation, except this time Jan is down on time. He doesn't have that extra time cushion to rely on, but I don't think that's a factor at all until he dips, let's say, under 2 minutes. Then we can start talking about the additional pressure that the time pressure exerts on him. If the situation clarifies further, and if we see this mutual liquidation, I think that Jan should be able to hold with room to spare.
Yeah, the White King slightly weaker than its counterpart, but hard to get at it for Black right now. I would love to add the Black Knight to the mix. It feels like it's not really contributing right now. I'm imagining putting that pony on d4 on a beautiful dark squared outpost, but it's a long, long journey to get there. So I'm not sure if he has that time, that luxury. I think Magnus might go for it because it's hard to see how else he improves the position. I'm imagining a circuit knight e8, c7, e6, the long way round, Danya. Do you see a better plan, or how White would counter that?
No, it's the paradox of the knight's movement. The hardest square for a knight to reach is the one directly to the left or to the right of it, right? The adjacent square. It's like when you arrive at the address that Google points you to. It says you're there, but you have to cross like a street that's impossible to cross. So you got to walk another mile just to cross the road and enter the establishment that you're staring at. That is the paradox of the knight's movement. It's simultaneously the most magical piece on the board, and also by far the most awkward piece on the board. It would fit right in with a group of middle schoolers until it pulls out its wand and transports itself to Hogwarts, also known as the D4 square.
Right, Harry, getting excited there. But yeah, bishop d7. I was going to say, you were talking about awkwardness. It could be a bunch of chess players too, feeling right at home there. But bishop d7, there is a threat, kind of, rook a3.
Yes, and okay, bishop h3. Also, Magnus kind of reminding Jan that he still has some king weakness problems to worry about. I feel like Jan is maybe 2 or 3 accurate moves away from holding the draw here, and he realizes it. That's why he's spending time.
Yeah, precisely. A move like queen to d2 comes to mind, just to try and keep the black pieces honest. Okay, he doesn't want to try and trade queens. The black queen now has to make a decision. Ooh.
Some tactics there with queen c2, bishop d1 trapping the queen, but then rook a1 untraps it and then traps the bishop in a pin against the king. But Magnus, no, he gets out of there.
That was tempting though, Daniel. It looked like the most ambitious, but also the most risky, self-trapping the Black Queen. Okay, he goes out. That was worth some calculation, but maybe Magnus learning from the previous game, trying to keep some time up his sleeve for later. Queen to a3. Still awkward, I've got to say. Still slightly awkward for white, but king f2, beautiful coordinating move. The white queen was undefended. Defend her, and ideas like knight to d5 will come into consideration in the near future.
I think it's obvious that what Jan wants more than anything is just to get the queens off the board in almost any circumstances. So I was wondering if knight d5 on the previous move was feasible, but it's also kind of unnecessary. And it's really important to note the role of this f3 pawn. Just coming back to the knight on f6 and how it hasn't been contributing for a while. It looks impressive. It looks like maybe knight g4 is going to be a thing at some point. It's never going to be a thing as long as this pawn will remain on f3. Maybe now is the time to start the long journey toward a better future. But I'm pessimistic now. The time situation equalizes. And if Magnus gets too cavalier with this piece placement, no pun intended, at some point, Jan could even think about reclaiming the initiative with a timely f4.
Yeah, belated, delayed King's Gambit there, f4.
That's right.
Yeah, I like knight d7. Queen d6 would be another safe move, but you're very much correct there. It feels like the moment has passed. I say that as Magnus tries to set a trap. Rook takes e5 there, might have walked into some queen to h1 business, the Black Queen infiltrating from behind. The position repeats itself. Daniel, are we going to see a draw by repetition, or do you think Magnus is going to fight on?
I never predict these moments correctly. I have a 0% track record, so I'm going to say, yes, we will get a draw. Magnus will take about a minute. He will start, moving his head from side to side in the universal kind of language about, but okay, might as well go Armageddon. Okay, another game, another fight.
We've seen that before, and yeah, I'm glad you made a prediction because then we can hope for the opposite. But here we go. Rook b5 will be the third time, and another draw. We get more chess. It's Armageddon. Your prediction spot on for once, Daniel.
For once, it raises my percentage success rate to 2%, and I think a sensible decision by Magnus Carlsen. It is easy to overpress in situations like these. We know that his track record in Armageddons is phenomenal. It's unimpeachable. He won an Armageddon yesterday. I think he feels confident in that particular format. But for Jan Nepomniachtchi, really clean, crisp chess. He played on even terms with Magnus. It really didn't feel like he was in that much danger, even in the first game.
That's right. There we see it. 2 draws, the players cancelling each other out, neutralizing each other. Very professional, high accuracy chess, and that does guarantee an Armageddon next. So stay tuned, everyone. We'll be back with that in a moment. In the meantime, though, we were talking about wizardry on the chessboard, and AnyChess brings you a magical new way to play chess. Its spell chess mechanics modify the offensive, defensive, and strategic dynamics of the game, adding layers to your gameplay that will change how you see chess entirely. Dive into spell chess puzzles and prepare for epic PvP battles with friends. To try your hand at AnyChess today, use ! AnyChess in chat, or go to go.chess.com/AnyChess to play. We'll be back in just a few moments with that Armageddon. And here we see
In recent years, we've had a lot of openings in chess that have become meme openings. So it could be strange, silly openings, and we want you to rank these different openings from brilliant to double question mark. And it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on these different openings. So we'll start with one f3.
Yeah, so f3 is just a bad first move. I don't see any upside to it, even as a beginner playing it, so I'm going to rank it in this double question mark.
Yeah, 1 f3, I guess that goes in the bad category. It's like somewhere between bad and playable, but I think it's appropriate for bad.
seeing some of the ones that are coming up, I'm going to put it as bad.
Okay. That's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
And then we have one A6.
It's probably going to be the best of the slots. So if it's very good, brilliant. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
1A6, yeah, playable for sure.
I mean, A6 has to be at the absolute top because I think Magnus and I have both won probably, I'm going to guess at least probably 30 to 40 games combined between us with that move in Title Tuesday. So it's at the very top, absolute top.
Great. And speaking of you and Magnus, we have the Bomb Cloud.
Yeah, the Bond Cloud is also at the very top. It's an opening that I think everybody knows, and you have to try it at least once. So very top, very, very top, S tier.
Yeah, the Monk Cloud is pretty. It's double question mark, unfortunately.
It's the double question mark.
Double question mark. And then we have the Greek opening.
Which is what?
I think it's F3, King F2.
Yeah, that's I think I would have to say again that's a very, very bad opening because actually in the Chess Champions Tour, the in-person final, I think in 2023, Jan-Krzysztof Duda, after tilting against me, he played it and lost. I think I also played against Kramnik in a Title Tuesday as well. So no upside again. Very, very bad opening.
Yeah, that's probably a double question mark, unfortunately.
And then we have the Hippo.
Nepo is definitely playable.
In this company, I'm going to say brilliant as well.
Yeah, so the Hippo is another opening that I think is very very playable. It's not something that's out of this world good, but it's nowhere near some of the other options that exist. So I would say it's playable. I think it's playable in the middle.
One of our partners for the Champions Chess Tour is AnyChess. AnyChess is a community-driven, free-to-play chess game with new strategic layers powered by magical spells. We have a game in front of us here. The players are currently going through a Vienna.
From humble ground, new pawn is crowned.
House Recruit creates a pawn on an empty square between the 3rd and 6th ranks. The spell counts as one move.
Skip a beat, landing sweet.
Bishop enables a bishop to leap over one piece and either move to an empty diagonal square or capture a piece.
Leap into the fray, knight's way.
Parkour Mech transforms any piece, except king or queen, into a knight. Transformation is permanent. If you want to play, Champions Chess Tour viewers can join the AnyChess Open Alpha waitlist with the referral code CCT and be among the first 100 to access the private alpha.
Welcome to the most exciting format in chess, Armageddon. The ultimate tiebreaker. Armageddon grants white more time on the clock, but in return, white must win. A draw secures black the match win. White starts with 10 minutes, and each player submits a confidential bid with an amount of time they are willing to start with. Lowest bid gets to choose their color, usually black, and those coveted draw odds. Let the Armageddon commence.
There we have it. Armageddon chess. If you don't know how to spell Armageddon, don't worry, it's not the end of the world, but it will be the end of the road for one of these two players. Magnus Carlsen bidding 8 minutes, and Danya, look at this. Just a few seconds difference, Jan Nepomniachtchi wins the bid by 4 seconds, 7 minutes 56.
Now that's quite rare. Obviously, we've seen just about everything. We've seen identical bids. We've seen bids that are 1 second apart. It's like the end of a Jeopardy game where, one contestant is just $1 above the others. Well, that means that Jan technically wins the bid. He will have the black pieces, but that's not a major consolation because Magnus defeated Wesley So in precisely the fashion he needed to. He was white. He put on the positional pressure, and that wasn't even close. So Jan has to keep it tight, and he has to manage his time well. There is no increment in the Armageddon, which means flagging is very much on the table.
Definitely, we'll see that added to the mix if one of the two players is struggling on the board. And yeah, how do you feel? How happy do you feel Magnus will be? 10 minutes against just under 8. It's not that big a time advantage, but he needs to win on demand now. How do you think that's going to play out, just judging on the first 2 games we've seen today?
I don't think he's sort of dancing on the table, throw a party level happy, but I think he's okay. Magnus is always okay with playing the white pieces, and I'm curious if his opening approach will change. I think generally he likes to play 1e4 in the Armageddon format, and then, of course, the ball immediately in Jan's court. He's already thinking, the wheels are already turning. How is he going to respond to 1e4? Wesley played an Italian. He was fine out of the opening, but it was the kind of position that Magnus was very comfortable with. Will we see something sharper from Jan Nepomniachtchi? Because the best way to lose an Armageddon game is to think only about playing for a draw. You have to treat it essentially like a normal game, David, if you've got the black pieces.
That's right. Although there is a bit of a roadblock, e4 is met by the Petrov, Jan Nepomniachtchi's favorite pet weapon, and huge success with it there. It looks like a Catalan again, Danya, a repetition of the previous game until this moment. Queen c2 first, slightly more rare than the variation we earlier saw.
Well, they had just about a couple minutes maybe to check the line to decide what they're going to play. And I got to say, we've already deviated from what I would call standard Catalan territory as Jan grabs the pawn on c4. And very likely on the next move, he's going to grab the other pawn on c5. And it's not uncommon for white to play down a pawn for extended periods of time in the Catalan. You've got a lot of things going in your favor to compensate for that.
Yeah, and he is down a pawn, Magnus Carlsen, and it's going to be hard to regain that pawn. Black's pawn on c4 often drops long term, but at least then was defended by the black queen temporarily. And the black queen, she's doing her work. She's getting a real workout now. Queen h5, knight g4 in the air here sometimes, Danya. And it looks like the queen relatively decently placed for now. The black queen side still needs to get developed, but what do you make of the early stages of this game? It feels like Jan, still in prep, only spent 15 seconds so far.
I'm very impressed with Jan's handling of the opening. And it can be hard to understand what the queen is doing on h5 until you realize that I think e5 is a very serious positional idea. There's actually several ideas that Jan could carry out, and that's what makes it hard for Magnus to choose a setup. The obvious one is e5, opening up this diagonal for the bishop. Before you know it, kind of Grand Prix attack style, he could land a bishop on h3 and a knight on g4. On a slightly less exotic note, he could also establish a knight on d5, harassing this bishop on e3, and obviously trying to goad Magnus into fixing his pawn structure. I don't know. Magnus has to be very precise here, and he acts super concretely with knight e4, kind of showing that he is concerned, and he is taking Jan's ideas seriously. But is he encouraging the move knight d5 here? No, bishop d7.
I would have said yes, he's encouraging knight d5, knight g4, all of it. But yeah, dual purpose move, Magnus's last one, to trade knights potentially, but also to regain the pawn that he's down right now, the pawn on c4. I don't know, I would be tempted to just whip those knights off the board, Danya. But then again, it doesn't feel like necessarily playing for the win, which he needs to do in this game. Time advantage almost disappeared already. And yeah, it just looks like a huge opening success for black.
Absolutely.
What could white even try here to obtain an advantage? I don't see it.
For Magnus, the big priority right now is keeping chances alive on the board. He doesn't even care about the clock anymore. Normally, you want to keep that time cushion just to add to the pressure. But right now, there are bigger fish to fry because Magnus realizes, should the bishop come to c6 and the knight get out to d7, winning the c4 pawn will be a very small consolation because the structure is so symmetrical. Black's position so devoid of weaknesses that unless Magnus creates some sort of imbalance, some sort of tactical intrigue in the next couple of moves, Jan might be home completely scot-free.
Yeah, remember everyone, this will be the final game for one of these two players in the CrunchLabs Masters. And Magnus has to win to ensure it won't be him leaving the tournament. And that knight trade did occur. Yes, he's got material level yet again, but this bishop on c6 is beautiful, totally neutralizing the Catalan bishop, Danya. White's pride and joy on g2, no longer the best minor piece on the board. And like you're highlighting there, knight d7, almost a pre-move next turn, assuming that white doesn't attack the black queen. But yeah, this just looks super healthy for black, and it looks like time advantage as well.
Whoa. Bishop f3, what are you doing? Magnus just blundered bishop takes f3, and it's a miracle he's not losing on the spot, David. In an Armageddon context, he's basically losing on the spot. he completely forgot about this move. And after the trade on h5, bishop takes b7, knight d7, black will get 2 pieces for a rook. This is unreal. What is this?
I mean, 2 pieces for a rook. Normally, for the side with 2 pieces, unless there's some kind of added factors into the equation, that's a dream for black here. So do you think Magnus has just not seen it? He's not reacting at all on the camera. This is a huge gamble. Okay,
no,
he doesn't even
I
frown.
think he missed it. I think he did briefly kind of react as soon as he played queen e5. I think it's a case of kind of releasing the piece. There's no way that he went for this position consciously, because in a classical game, Jan would never take a draw with the black pieces here. Black is, in general, playing for the win. Of course, with the piece imbalance, we know that these kind of situations can get out of hand for the side that lacks a rook. Like if white activates the rook, if he can swap the other pair of rooks, yeah, there's a pawn majority on the queen side. But with good play, Jan should hold this with room to spare.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's all about trying to trade off one set of rooks if you're Magnus Carlsen right now, because black does need the rook to cover all those open lines, as you're mentioning. The black bishop on h5 temporarily out of the game, so Jan very sensibly tries to retract that bishop. He's going to retreat it to e8, f7, get back via that angle. Okay, the eval bar didn't approve of this last move by black, but he doesn't necessarily need to win. He's just trying to cover everything, and Magnus taking big risks here as he needs to win the game. Offering a bishop trade, I would have said this is a sensible, logical move, but why could this be a mistake, Daniel?
Well, funnily enough, the computer was screaming for rook c7, a move that I thought was blatantly impossible because of knight d5. But rook takes a7, I don't have the time to show it, actually worked out for white. So maybe a missed opportunity, and just look at how magically Jan has positioned his bishops. It's a completely defensive approach. He's covering all of the business squares. He's keeping the rooks entirely at bay. And now Jan has a series of easy ways to just improve his position. Maybe he doesn't want to play e5 because maybe he wants to maintain the d5 square as a potential stronghold for his knight. Obviously, white's probably going to play e4. But Jan could essentially tread water here. And I'm having a hard time understanding how Magnus will create serious chances on the board. Maybe he'll have to do it on the clock.
Yeah, and I love how he's positioned those black bishops. Viewers at home might be wondering why black has such an advantage here, or at least would in a kind of classical game. And it's, I mean, technically level material, rook and pawn versus 2 minor pieces. That's 6 points each, but essentially it's two pieces are better than one. And it's not a Spice Girls song, which I nearly quoted there, but you have 2 minor pieces, a knight and bishop, and the opponent only has a rook. So if it comes down to a straight battle, then the 2 pieces will always come out on top, especially because Magnus's extra pawn here on the queen side, not really too far advanced. So he's doing some weird stuff with his pieces, I've got to say, Nepomniachtchi, but so far he's got everything covered.
Yeah, he's got a little circle of pieces here, and there's a lot of tactics that hide behind the scenes that are easy to miss, and yet that the players factor in. Bishop takes a7, an attempt to deflect the rook from a8. That didn't work out. Maybe black has other ways to respond, but even rook takes a7 and rook takes a2 check is definitely not a positive transformation for white. Magnus, I really think that his goal right now should be to keep the status quo while posing small problems for Nepo, make him nervous, right? No increment, get him under 3 minutes, and then reevaluate the situation. But a5, I don't know about allowing this trade of bishops. I think this is a step in the right direction for Magnus.
Yeah, he asked for that trade of bishops a few moves ago. Jan said no, but this time his hand was forced, and suddenly the white rooks can infiltrate on the dark squares. The bishop pair, if you have them together, then you should always try to maintain them, especially on a board that's pretty open. Now less control over the dark squares, black's minor pieces passive. I could see the white king darting over towards the queen side a bit later. There we go, the king does actually start its journey, and yeah, suddenly I would say it's a 50-50, Dania, especially with the clock times. This could go either way. A draw far from guaranteed here.
Magnus lost the match to MVL, but you remember better than anybody the queen endgame that he won, the completely dead drawn endgame. There was no way he was going to win it. No. Suddenly, yes. This is what Magnus can do, right? Suddenly, it doesn't even seem like Jan did anything particularly wrong. Maybe a couple of sloppy moves. I really did not like a5, because after the trade of dark squared bishops, suddenly white's rooks have assumed a pretty commanding position. Suddenly Jan's clock is under 4 minutes. Suddenly Magnus is feeling a little bit spry. And even though he doesn't have any concrete threats, it's just not easy for black to find a move.
Yeah, he finds one square for his knight, but that black knight is going to be kicked around a few more times. And you said it. I mean, in terms of playing this game out for the long term with no increments involved, Magnus can just push a pawn one square, sit for 30 moves, push a pawn again, sit for another 30, 40 moves, and the clock situation could well play a factor. Okay, he rushes forward immediately, f4. I'm slightly surprised Magnus committed like that, but okay. Can he make progress and keep asking the questions? 1 minute in it, and is it e5, Daniel? Is he going to play on both sides of the board, or will he start pushing the queen side? A4 also looks slightly tempting to just block that flank, keep the black pawn fixed.
Magnus likes to follow the endgame advice, do not hurry, especially when the clock is a serious factor. At the same time, you don't want to skip over opportunities to improve your position just because you're dogmatically following the principle of treading water and trying to get your opponent low on time. And I think G4 is a clear indication that Magnus is not just, pushing pawns to push pawns, although it may seem that way. I actually think he is preparing the move E5 or maybe the move G5. Jan continues to get pushed backward and backward. He's really occupying the last two rows with all of his pieces. His position is cramped. It's uncomfortable. I think we're in like 60-40 territory now. In favor of Magnus. This is not looking great.
Yeah, it's that trend again. Momentum all on white side, and f takes g5 is ugly. If that was necessary, then it's really sad times for Jan Nepomniachtchi right now. Suddenly all the black pawns are isolated, weak, and that's where rooks do thrive over minor pieces, especially against knights. Rooks are long-range pieces. They can play on both flanks. Just the placement of those two pieces as well for Magnus. Real dominant fashion right now. I'm surprised he took with a pawn, I've got to say, Dania. He's keeping things stretched, but Magnus now maybe overthinking the position. He spent a long time and clocks are back to level.
It's crazy how perspective and time control changes your assessment of time pressure, right? I play 3+0 chess. If you gave me 3 minutes and 18 seconds in this position, that would be such a luxury. But in a 10-minute game, when you're used to being able to take those 3-4 minutes in a critical moment, this is not a lot of time at all for either side to sort of prosecute the complexities of this endgame as Jan continues to zig and to zag with his knight, trying to find the ideal defensive post and actually inviting Magnus to play this move G6, which may be overcommittal at this point with nothing to lose. You have to win this game. You have to throw your chips into the middle of the table. Will we see G6, David? Is that the best option? Or is he going to continue his restriction strategy with E5?
Yeah, I was going to say, Daniel, there we go, G6. It's the more ambitious of the two. But the problem for Magnus is there's suddenly too many tempting options. He actually goes for a combination of the two. Look how he's totally boxed in the black king, the black knight, black bishop. If the white rooks ever get around to that G7 pawn, it's just game over. So I love what Magnus has done. However, it's committal. Ooh,
it's committal, but he is just in time to get his king onto the right spot. Jan desperately scrambles his rook. Rook d2, potentially an idea. Obviously, that leaves the 7th rank exposed. He's also sacrificing the a5 pawn, but sacrificing in air quotes. How easy is it in time pressure to miss a fork like this? Rook a8, so precise. This is Magnus at his best. This is the boa constrictor in action.
Ooh, and the rook does leave that 7th rank. There's a really scary check now for Nepomniachtchi to deal with. He's tying up his pieces just to block the white rooks, but he has counterplay with the black rook for the first time in this game. He's suddenly gone active, and okay, this is anyone's game still, Dania. Jan with nearly an extra minute on his clock, and he's defending actively. That's normally a good sign.
And this is like a fencing match. One side has the initiative, then the other side has the initiative. Jan's minor piece is just lying in wait, so patiently waiting for their opportunity to get active. This knight on d8 in particular, that is the piece that white has to keep an eye on. White's also suddenly down 45 seconds on the clock. I didn't even notice how Magnus spent quite a bit of time on those last couple of moves, not finding a way to make further progress. No increment. He's got to do something. He can't repeat moves. And there's the attempt.
Ooh. He's allowing the black knight into c6 in the near future. He's no longer keeping that beast caged. And you mentioned yesterday he won that Armageddon against Wesley So. The clock was never really a factor there, but knight c6. They're missing it.
Opportunity there. That would have just won the e5 pawn. That would have sealed the deal.
And he can do it again. Bring that knight out. The players are ignoring the black knight. He's just giving all the checks. Jan, he's trying to force the draw, trying to force Magnus to burn more time on the clock. But that touch screen, we didn't mention it yesterday, but here it is again.
And
Magnus in trouble.
Jan was forced into playing that move. He literally had no other moves. That bishop on d7 is a hero, David. It's controlling, it's defending the knight, it's restricting the rook on c7. Magnus goes hither and thither in search of some last-ditch attempt to complicate the game. He's now over a minute down on the clock. I don't see this happening for him. Another check on d5. King f6. And white is losing after king f6.
White has nothing. White has no attack anymore. The black pieces have come out. Magnus, look at him on the camera, despondent, and 1 minute only. This is over, both on board and clock. Jan, barring a blunder, barring a miracle, he's going to knock Magnus out of the CrunchLabs Masters. Another check. The black pieces, they've unfurled themselves, as you said, Dania, and that spelled the end.
And the worst, I mean, in a classical game where Jan is trying to win, okay, there's still intrigue. Literally, black does not have to do anything at all. Just avoid blundering and avoid getting your king trapped in a mating. And I've seen these positions go south when, you know, the side with the two pieces forgets about king safety and forgets about the prospect of a ladder mate. Jan Nepomniachtchi is not among those players. He has found the perfect setup. Look at that knight on b4. You would never guess how much time that knight spent on the e8 square. Magnus is losing everything here.
Yeah, all of the pawns have dropped off. The a4 pawn soon will fall, and Magnus, shake of the head, he might even be getting ready to resign soon. I just don't see him completing this game in 45 seconds.
Fork.
Oh, and he's walked into another knight fork. Magnus resigns. Nepomniachtchi takes it. Dania, what a turn up. That turned around so quickly. And Jan goes through.
And you would never guess it by his, wow, what an emotional reaction, really rubbing it in Magnus's face. The way that he is drinking his water, how obnoxious, the celebration, the confetti that falls from the ceiling. But really, that was incredible. Incredible poise by Jan Nepomniachtchi to, first of all, get into that endgame in the first place. Suddenly, it looked like Magnus had all the momentum, but Jan found so many accurate moves, kept himself totally composed. Hey, it's not the World Championship, but this is pretty big. Magnus Carlsen is knocked out of the CrunchLabs Masters. It's his lowest place ever, and Jan Nepomniachtchi has a chance to restore his glory and to keep his winning ways going with a match against Alireza Firouzja, David.
That's right, and that will be the main course of our event today. We have seen the end of Magnus Carlsen, but Jan Nepomniachtchi's journey goes on. There we see it's confirmed Magnus Carlsen is out of the CrunchLabs Masters. But next up is Alireza Firouzja against Jan Nepomniachtchi. And where do you feel Jan clinched it in that last game, Dania? What was the critical turning point of the Armageddon?
Well, I think the first stage was the fact that he set the tone with his excellent opening preparation. It didn't seem like the kind of position that he could anticipate, but maybe reaching back and pulling out some old candidates prep was Jan Nepomniachtchi. Now, Magnus Carlsen repeated the Catalan, which he played in game 1, but he deviated with an early queen to c2, discouraging Jan from playing d takes c4. Nepo says, no problem, I got this covered too. He creates the pawn cube, and then he recovers both of white's pawns. He recovers it with interest, swings his queen to h5. This was an excellent move, and he starts posing serious practical problems that Magnus just wasn't able to solve. With the prospect of the knight coming out to d7 and Jan completely stabilizing the position, Magnus maybe blunders, maybe tries to destabilize the situation with queen e5. This walks right into bishop takes f3. Now, white does not lose an entire minor piece, but instead gets a rook and a pawn for 2 minor pieces. But these are 2 excellently placed minor pieces. Jan finds a suitable spot for them as he brings his bishops back to the 8th rank in order to control all of the rook's infiltration squares. Now, we don't have the time to delve into all of the subtleties of this endgame. It was an incredibly complicated endgame. There were chances for Magnus at various points. Jan never made any huge mistakes. There was a point when we thought the game was about to turn around. Maybe the turning point, if I had to point it out, was here. I think rook takes g5 would have afforded Magnus an easier position to play, more practical chances. Instead, he took on g5 with the pawn, creating more pawn islands and giving Jan Nepomniachtchi's knight a clear roadmap to restoring its position. Maybe a little bit later, there were some options as well. After rook d7, the key turning point, according to the computer, came actually all the way here, but even the engine is not totally sure how to proceed. Maybe a3 in this position would have been a better bet. But when all is said and done, Magnus is down 30 seconds. Eventually, he lets Jan's knight back into the game. And at this point, the pawns start falling one after the other. They go. There goes the g-pawn. And there go Magnus's chances for a win. There goes the knight establishing itself on an impervious outpost on b4, and Jan Nepomniachtchi drives the point home with some impeccable technique. He needed a draw. David, he got a win. This was an excellent showing by Jan Nepomniachtchi. The sweet taste of revenge.
Incredible stuff by Jan Nepomniachtchi, and we will be seeing more of him later today. In the meantime, it may be the end of the road for Magnus here in the CrunchLabs Masters, but he will be back in action in just a few days' time. So the 2024 Speed Chess Championship does begin in just a few days. This year's field consists of invited mainstays like Magnus, like Hikaru, and Title Tuesday powerhouses like Arjun Erigaisi and Jose Martinez, as well as play Invictor Denis Lazovic. Each contender has earned their way into the $175,000 tournament, but only 4 will make it to the SCC finals in Paris, and only 1 will claim the title of the Speed Chess Champion. The action begins on July 25th, so tune in whenever you watch and wherever you watch chess.com streams, and use !SCC in chat for everything you need to know. Magnus Carlsen officially eliminated in 4th place here at the CrunchLabs Masters. Jan Nepomniachtchi showing top form, sparkling form to eliminate Magnus, and goes through to face Alireza Firouzja. Join us in just a few minutes for that crunch match.
Do you think there exists an alternative universe where you are better than I am at chess?
Yes.
Yeah, he's not really sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a tough question. Like,
have you ever used slang or trendy phrases you didn't fully understand, hoping it will make you sound cooler? I really hope so.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. Who hasn't, though?
Who hasn't?
Like,
yeah. Who hasn't?
I mean, I still don't know the meaning of half the words I say when I commentate. You can do better, Magnus. Hit me with harder questions.
Were you happy to hear that Nikita Vityugov started representing England?
Truthfully, no. I was, gutted. Still a bit.
Yeah, that's true.
Just after I became #1 as well, it was such a kick in the teeth.
Would you rather be competing in events or cover them?
Oh, I would rather, these days, cover them.
He had to consider that, but he's telling the truth.
Personal growth? Yeah. This is amazing. I'm proud of you.
Thanks. If you asked me this like 3 years ago, I would have said differently.
Yeah.
Definitely. Even 2 years ago. But
yeah, I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, how much do I owe you for the therapy session?
I don't know.
Oh. Made you think?
Yeah. You wanted me to take the pawn, huh?
We're playing like grumpy old men right now.
Yeah. Do you wish you had learned more mainline theory as a kid?
Yes.
He's telling the truth.
I mean, I wish I learned more as a teenager, as an adult. Can't believe you're going after my openings already. Like, you're not impressed.
Do you regret choosing chess as a career?
Took me a while to decide on chess, but I'm glad I did.
That's a lie.
Oh! There's other stuff I think I could have done equally well, but...
Wow, I feel bad now.
Yeah, football management is hard to get into, so it's...
What's the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you during a chess game? Okay, I gotta simplify the game a bit.
Once in a big money game, Armageddon game, I was so nervous I spilt water all over the board, fizzy water, and I went on to lose pretty badly.
Yeah, he's not really sure about that.
It's a hard question. It's a hard question.
Yeah.
I've never like wet my pants during a game or anything, like if that's more embarrassing.
Do you like your own posts on social media?
No, I don't.
That's a lie.
I swear I haven't. Maybe accidentally and then unliked it.
I should
Blunder,
ace it.
rookie 7.
He goes for mate. He doesn't even want the pawn. Oh my gosh.
Oh, and rook takes g3, blundered his queen. And Hikaru wins.
Oh, you gotta move. He moved that with 0.5 seconds.
Wesley held it, b5. There's a queen sack on g3 and F leads to mate. And he's done it. Oh!
Oh my goodness, that is beautiful. Wow. Just wow.
A2, rook a2. He missed it. Oh my gosh, Anand. Hikaru had forced to mate. And it's a draw by agreement.
These guys are just two titans, two champions going at one another.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Division 1 of the CrunchLabs Masters, part of the Champions Chess Tour. I'm your host, David Howell, and I'm joined by Daniel Naroditsky. It's D squared for you today as we take you through all the action. Daniel, it's been a lot of drama so far.
Indeed, it's D squared. It's also N squared and Nepo squared, because we're going to get more Nepo action as he takes down Magnus Carlsen in an amazing Armageddon performance, so level-headed, so composed in the critical moments. And now he takes on Alireza Firouzja. As you said during the break, David, completely different vibe of this match. Different openings, different approach to chess. And for Alireza Firouzja, he's got a major issue to figure out, because Jan Nepomniachtchi is the worst player to burn lots of time against. Yesterday, MVL played amazing, but Alireza froze in critical moments. It was unlike him, and he can't do that again today.
That's right. He needs to be faster. He needs to be better, simply, Alireza Firouzja. And I would say that Jan Nepomniachtchi has a similar style somewhat to Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who was the conqueror of Firouzja yesterday. As you said, they will punish any mistakes. They're very instinctive players, and they have very well-defined opening repertoires. Yesterday, Firouzja was trying to experiment. It backfired somewhat, so he'll need something a bit different today. Here we see him on the camera joining the action for the first time. Daniel, do you think having that freshness is going to favor him today, or will Jan Nepomniachtchi, who's now warmed up, be the favorite in this match, do you feel?
That's the thing. I think it's easy to just assume that Alireza is fresh. You know, he could get a little bit more sleep. I guess it's evening for him, maybe a little bit of extra nap time. But in reality, I don't think that 2 games or 3 rapid games are going to make such a big difference. I think that it's impossible to predict the exact impact that Jan's previous match will have on his play in this match. It'll probably give him some confidence. I also really want to see 1e4. We've had a lot of d4. We've had a lot of Catalan. I want to see some opening explosiveness, and that backfired on Alireza Firouzja with both colors yesterday. Let's see what changes he can bring to the table. Let's see if he's got something against Jans Petrov.
That's the key question. Does anyone have an idea against the Petrov these days? But in the meantime, let's just remind everyone of the format here in the losers final. It will, just like the previous match, be a best of 2 game match. So the first to 1.5 will win the match. The time format is back to the regular 10 minutes plus 2 seconds after every move. The winner will advance to face Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in the grand final in a couple of days' time. And the loser of this match will be eliminated in 3rd place. Will we get Armageddon again? We'll wait and see. But in the meantime, Dania, as you said, different nature to this match. It definitely feels like we'll see more kind of killer moments as the tactics are sure to fly with Firouzja involved.
At the same time, maybe Alireza says, listen, I'm not in the mood to look for something against the Petrov. when he tries to avoid theory, he likes to play kind of a London-based system. He'll go d4 and then bishop f4, or d4 and e3. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see something like that, or even one c4 by Alireza if he tries to take a different approach than he did yesterday against MVL. He went for the throat, he went for the freak attack, and then the English attack against the Najdorf. Both times, it was a fiasco right out of the opening. So maybe a change of tune is what Alireza needs to reignite that passion and reignite that confidence in his play. We'll see.
Yeah, and that change of tune, that switch up, nearly got him success, Alireza Firouzja, against Jan Nepomniachtchi in the candidates tournament. I remember when suddenly Firouzja, who was having a bad tournament, switched to knight f3, b3, some really kind of unorthodox, really kind of less direct style of chess. And he got a winning position against Jan Nepomniachtchi, failed to finish it off though. And actually, historically, Jan has a pretty decent score against Firouzja. So the player is now ready to go. It looks like just making their last minute preparations there. Firouzja wearing a sports top. I can't quite make out which team that is, but he looks ready for action.
He is indeed. And of course, they played in the candidates in Madrid, the game after Firouzja's famed bullet match. I mean, who would ever set him up for failure like that? That was the candidates tournament that Jan Nepomniachtchi won so convincingly. So, of course, the shadow of that game, I think, has haunted the rivalry between these two players ever since. We've had a lot of interpersonal rivalry, a lot of score settling on the board, strictly on the board. And guess what? We do have a London system by Firouzja, a clear indication that he wants to start from scratch. He wants a completely different tenor of the match compared to yesterday's match against MVL.
Yeah, Danya the Prophet, you're back. A London system, as you predicted, and it looks like Jan Nepomniachtchi predicted this as well. He's played into a very direct variation where black actually grabs and trades off that key London bishop. The dark square bishop for white is gone.
Whoa. Could you please relax? The bullet championship is over, Alireza. You've already won it.
You've already won it. These players, Danya. And wow, what's this last move? Black doesn't even take back the pawn he sacrificed 5 moves ago. This is weird stuff.
What? Calm down, please. I can't. Not at my advanced age. I don't even understand what's happening here. Long castles, then a4, establishing the bishop on b5. I guess all of the moves that they're playing make sense on the surface. Are you telling me that this position is still in some chess base file that they had to dust off and dig up from 2013?
I mean, it's not just in one of their chess-based files. Clearly, it's in both of them, both of their opening repertoires. They've clearly both done their homework here. Jan is the first one to pause. Firouzja, what move are we on now? Like move 20 pretty much almost, and he's barely spent any time. He's gained time almost.
He's gained time.
Daniel, yeah, this is crazy. You talk about your advanced age. I mean, Jan, Nepo, he's even older than you. How can his heart take it playing such crazy chess?
Well, he finally slows down. He is the first to settle down and assess the situation. And he is down a pawn, but Alireza taking the advice, the gratuitous advice shared by the commentators to heart. He says, you want me to play faster? Hey, how about I'll play so fast I'll have 13 minutes at the end of the game. How do you like that, huh? And so far, it seems to be working out pretty well. Now, I think the big question here for black, where do you put this knight on c6? Because my instinct, David, is to move this knight so that you open up the attack on the c file and so that eventually you try to round up this pawn on c5. But there are quite a few tempting squares. I mean, knight b4 is the obvious move. Maybe like knight a7, because knights on the rim are the best, as the advice goes. What would you do in this position?
Like you said, my eyes were instantly drawn to knight b4. Again, I'm not sure why. I guess it's a forward jumping move, and you threaten kind of to win your pawn back, restore the material balance. Just looks like the most active choice. Knight a7 is also tempting because you do create that concrete threat of trading off white's bishop. The black a pawn would then be free. You kind of gain a tempo. I'm assuming white would have to drop back with that bishop to d3 in the near future. But no, he does play the more human approach, and the eval bar immediately rises. The question mark appears. Why could that be?
Man, I don't understand anything anymore. And maybe the reason is positional, right? Often when you see the eval bar move up, you just kind of assume that the reason is tactical. Something was missed, a pawn was blundered somewhere. But maybe what the engine is saying is that even if black were to recapture on c5, white has this nasty little move c3, and the problem is that the knight cannot return back to its home square on c6. It'll have to drop back to a6, and I would take a knight on a7 over a knight on a6 any day of the week, particularly on Monday.
Yeah, I can't believe it's just Monday. The tournament's been going on for a long, long time, it feels like. But we're at the start of this week and at the start of this losers final. And night before, I wonder whether it's just F5, whether you just continue pushing forward, maybe including C3 or not, first of all. Maybe it's something in conjunction with that just to try and break the black pawn chain. Yeah, I don't know whether you start with rook to E1 just to get ready for that advance. But either way, a very natural move. And okay, Firouzja is kind of taking his first big thing. I remember that was the advice of one of my first coaches, Danya. I'm a ton trouble addict. I always have been. And my coach was like, okay, just start learning some openings that get you to move 20 where you don't need to think. You kind of blitz out half the game. You save the remainder of your time for the critical moments. And I was like, wait, that actually makes sense.
Right.
So that's when I kind of first started studying openings. And it seems to be working for Firouzja here. He's got a great position and loads of time on the clock as he does go F for forward, F5.
Great call, David. And I think that there's kind of a funny subtlety in the sense that he is sort of delaying the move C3 and saving it for the right moment. Just really quickly to rewind, if I understand this correctly, the reason that C3 was not as effective is because here the knight drops back to A6 and it essentially has an exit ramp, right? So this is the subtlety that always hides behind the scenes of these games. Now, if you play F5, black kind of solves all of his problems, particularly the problems with the knight by recapturing on C5. So Firouzja waits for the black bishop to capture on C5. Now he plays C3, and now the knight is once again, well, now the knight finds its way back to C6 somehow, and now the players continue blitzing out their moves.
Yeah, I'm really surprised actually that Firouzja rushed to take on E6. It didn't feel like that was immediately necessary. He could have brought his rook to E1 first. He could have played Queen H3 first, keeping the idea of F6 open for later. And now, as the blue arrow points out, black actually has a nice post for his rook on F6, defending, controlling. That wasn't available. So talking of these subtleties you mentioned on the last move, Danya, this subtlety seems to favor black.
And this is a pretty important moment because the move that you would play in a bullet game, sort of the instinct move, is rook A to E8, and it can look nice to position your rooks next to each other, but that's not an economical use of resources. Also, that move would pin the knight on C6. Rook F6 is not a move that Jan is going to miss, and dare I say he's close to solving his opening problems. But David, I still think his position is a little bit uncomfortable, and maybe a couple of accurate moves separate him from full equality. This central construction is anything but stable. Rook E8, rook takes D5 is just one of many examples that highlight it.
Yeah, and he does stabilize with swinging his queen over, missing the blue arrow move rook H6, but I think that's another one he wants to save up his sleeve for later. And now F4 recommended by the computer. I'm assuming that's the computer's arrow, not yours, but that's a cool move. Just locking down black's pawn chain there in the center, just while black is unable to capture on F4.
It's a logical move when it's played on the board, and yet I'm far from convinced that I would have mustered up the courage to play it, even in a classical game. Yes, the F2 pawn is technically hanging, but I don't think that's white's biggest concern. I think the big concern is that Jan's central pawns are set in motion, and this is why Mr. Firouzja is sitting in that chair and playing this move. F4 is found, and out of the sleeve of Jan Nepomniachtchi comes rook H6. But has this move lost a little bit of its effectiveness compared to the previous move? The queen can zigzag out of the side attacks by the rook and park itself on F3.
Yeah, again, it's all these subtleties. It's all these move orders, Danya. Like, we talk about move orders so much. I didn't really understand the concept of move order until I was in my teens. And yeah, if black had hit the white queen previously on the last turn, while the white pawn were back on F2, then there's no hiding space behind any pawns for the white queen. Suddenly, like you say, yeah, rook H6 here, for example, queen G4, rook G6. If queen F3, rook F6. You just perpetually hit this white queen, harass her until she drops back to a bad square, like E2, for example. But now she has a beautiful square on F3. And yeah, it's these small little details.
And so he goes a completely different direction. He takes on H2, but that is not a move you play because you're so happy to be capturing white's pawns. This already kind of reeks of desperation. I think Nepo is trying to complicate the game to make it tactical. Now, wait a second. Rook takes C6. Is he relying on rook takes G2? And just looking at the EVA bar, does that succumb to a tactic? Or does white just recapture on G2 and then take on D5 and claim that the light square control is going to make black's position untenable?
Yeah, even me, who's reluctant to calculate, would be looking at that variation, Danya, and even just the simple recaptures, taking on G2, take on D5. The Black King looks so much more vulnerable than its counterpart. The White King is going to hide out super safe forever on the A2 square. The Black King is going to come under some heavy, heavy pressure. So at the very minimum, I would say that would be a tempting option for Firouzja. This might be where he starts burning a lot of time, though, because suddenly options are opening up. It looks tempting to just kind of sit on the position. Oh, queen takes even you're highlighting.
Well, that's one of the annoying things, right? You see an obvious move like rook takes c6, you're about to play it, and then you stop yourself and you say, well, wait a second, queen takes c6 gets the queens off the board. And I actually like this option. The Soviet schoolboy inside of me says that all of White's advantages are maintained even with the queens off the board. And yes, including the chances for a lightning attack against Black's king. And I'm seeing tons of variations to confirm that point. If this bishop on b5, David, drops back to c4, and obviously I'm talking after the queens are traded and White takes this hapless pawn on d5, there's going to be mate threats coming from everywhere against Black's king. I think Black is just borderline losing here. Bishop takes c6 is also a threat. What a nasty, nasty endgame.
Yeah, even now, bishop takes c6. If you want to be... Wait, rook takes c6 for a second. I was very tempted by if you want to force some trades in the position right now. But either way, White's going a pawn up at the very minimum, right?
Yes, and you have to be very careful if you're Alireza. I don't think that you should reinvent the wheel here. Looks like rook takes d5 is by far the move with the most meat on the bone. The problem if you play a move like rook takes c6 is that, yes, you might win, you might emerge a pawn up, but Black has this little pawn on h7. Doesn't look like it will amount to anything now. But when that pawn lands on h3, you might start changing your mind. I think Alireza needs to be efficient here. He needs to trust his instinct and just take that pawn on d5.
Yeah. Keep all of the threats up your sleeve for later. There's a bunch of chess cliches about the threat being stronger than the execution, and this might be showing that that is true. And you spotted more tactics.
Can I show a cute but irrelevant but still very cute mating pattern? Let me just very, very quickly make a couple random moves for Black. The point of bishop c4, what threat does this actually create? Well, among the many threats, there's a beautiful mate with rook to d8. One rook selflessly gives itself up, and so does the other rook, except you can't capture it because this is a double check and a mate, a double discovered mate, not something that you say every day. Obviously, this will not happen, but David, let me tell you, bishop c4 is just as serious, if not more serious of a threat than bishop takes c6, just to make matters even worse for Nepo.
Exactly. Bishop c4, even if the Black King sidesteps, you've kind of created this launchpad for the white rook on b5. Rook b5 will come and wait, bishop c4 wins.
Wait, he's played rook b8, the random move that I played just to pass the turn to show the mating pattern. He's actually made that move. And the reason he's made that move is to deter the move bishop takes c6. I think Jan has completely neglected the other side of the coin here.
Wow, and let's maybe talk about that variation. Let's follow it through. Why is White winning there? Bishop c4. If the Black King sidesteps from those beautiful checkmating patterns...
Well, now there's another problem, and it's rook b5, David. And guess what? I'll let you do the honors in this position.
Rook takes b7. I think the back rank checkmate still persists. Yeah, I don't think I'm missing anything here. Rook to e8 is a checkmate. The Black King trapped. And Black's pieces are all falling. They're like dominoes, and bishop c4 on the board. This could be lights out for Jan Nepomniachtchi in this first game.
Such a perfect illustration of the fact that opposite colored bishops have this tactical edge to them. And, you know, we keep saying this because it's a really important concept. The fact that, yes, if you eliminate all of the other pieces, it gives the defending side great drawing chances. But White's monopoly over the light squares shines through in every single move of this line. Bishop c4 ends the game. There is nothing to say here. It's over. He's got the threat of rook d8. He's got the threat of rook b5. There's nothing that Jan can do here. He is totally helpless. What a display by Firouzja. So smooth.
This is Firouzja in top form. Like when he gets his opening preparation in, when he's still got time on the clock, he's just phenomenal. And there was a sneaky look at the camera. Firouzja's been glancing over at Jan Nepomniachtchi on the camera to check out his expressions. He knows he's winning. He does the power, kind of lean back, the sip of water. And I just want to highlight, Danya, that connect 4 is my favorite pawn structure, but this is connect 4 of pieces on that diagonal. And just look at the light square domination. It's beautiful, aesthetically, just so pleasing. White's position right now.
Man, that was a huge water bottle. Good to know that Alireza is staying hydrated. Somehow it only came out when he was winning. I wouldn't be shocked if Jan resigns here. And, there were a lot of components to this game, but I think Firouzja's opening choice really displays the kind of maturity and professionalism that we're used to, right? He played E4, didn't work out, so he kind of sat down and he really evaluated what kind of position he wants to go for. He did his homework, and it shines through with every move in this game. Rook b5 is on the board. It's automatic. They'll see ideas like this in their sleep.
Yeah, and Jan Nepomniachtchi shaking his head there on the camera. We're moments away from a resignation from him. I mean, simply nothing to do. Black's losing a piece here. I don't think you can avoid losing a piece just to prevent the checkmate from incoming. Bishop to a7. Will he take this pawn on b7? Is there anything even better here? I think you just take the pawn and probably move on to the next game. I don't see any defense here for Black.
Honestly, even if there was a queen somewhere that was hanging, I might still take the pawn on b7. Such is the temptation, such is the power and aesthetic effect a move like this creates, leaving the knight entirely exposed, therefore leaving the bishop exposed. I think Jan's only try is maybe to play h5 and create a Luft square for the king, but I assume there must be many ways of finishing this one off.
Yeah, he's at least asking a question, Jan Nepomniachtchi. So a good tip for everyone at home, do not resign too early, even if you think you're totally lost, which Jan is here. Just in case you get one or two more moves, just in case the opponent isn't accurate and the black pawn suddenly runs down the board. But I can see various ways to win a piece for White. I just would have to do some counting here if I were Alireza Firouzja to ensure that the black pawn isn't running too fast. There we go, rook to e7. The black bishop, if it moves, will allow a check on e8, and the black knight would be undefended. If the black knight tries to defend its bishop, knight c6, rook c7 would win the piece. And this is over.
You say dominoes, I say Pac-Man. Whatever you compare this to, Jan is not going to be left with a lot of pieces. A couple of moves down the line. It's funny that Alireza could have also played rook e5, and there was another mating pattern with sort of semi-Anastasia's mate instead of a knight on e7. Hopefully there won't be a knight on e7 because that would mean Alireza blundered his rook. But instead the bishop on c4 cutting off the king's escape. Easy clap, rook c7 on the board. Jan might as well try h4, but I mean, choose your pick there. There's so many winning options. Even a check on c8 followed by a check on g8 might be an Alireza style way to seal the deal.
That is really clever tempo play there, Danya. And the white bishop will always, if need be, kind of sit on the d5 square and cover the diagonal, the promotion square of the black pawn. So the pawn does run as the pieces fall, as the house burns on the other side of the board. But
yeah, I don't care.
It's falling on hope here.
That's all I need. Minimalism, hashtag let's Marie Kondo these minor pieces. Who needs them anyway? I've played Alireza enough times to know that he doesn't want to just take the knight. He wants to do this with a flourish. He wants to put the ribbon on top of the gift wrapping. My vote is rook c8 and bishop g8.
Yeah, I think he's going to find that. He's going to go for it. That would save white a tempo because you end up taking that black knight with a check. Once the black king is forced to the 6th rank, it drops with a check and you... Oh, boo. He takes the knight first, but no harm done. Still totally winning. At the very minimum, bishop to d5 will come. What do you think the cleanest is here? There we go.
But you know what the sad thing is, David? The sad thing is that even in the absolute best case scenario for black, God forbid you play rook g1, h2, and h1, white is 3 pawns to the good on the queen side. And I think this might even be what Alireza is going for, just to demonstrate how hopeless black's position is. When your best case scenario is 3 pawns down for no compensation, it's time to resign.
Yeah, there's even threats of rook to c8 and bishop e4 check in this position. And black would either allow the white rook behind the h-file or the black bishop would drop. So I think we'll see that end the game.
No. He's going to win another piece, isn't he?
It's greedy Firouzja, but just power play from him. So impressive, Danya. We were talking about whether being fresh would be a benefit here, and the opening prep combined with his tactical sharpness, he's going to take the lead.
This was a commanding game. It's hard to say where the decisive mistake was. I think that there were a couple of sloppy moves, and it felt like it all started with knight b4. Impressive opening prep, assuming that it was opening prep by both sides, David. And that knight leap to b4, as natural as it was to establish the knight on a nice protected square, that knight ended up being the bane of Black's existence. Now he's missing the knight, and he's also going to be missing the bishop, and he's going to be missing a point, which he needs to make up in the very next game. This is going to be a very tall order for Jan Nepomniachtchi, because Alireza's form today is clearly much improved.
That's right. Firouzja on fire, and the white bishop cannot be chased forever. Even bishop to g8 is a threat, and Firouzja takes the win. Nepomniachtchi resigns and will have to come back in this losers final. What a game, Danya. I think it's one of the most flawless games, one of the most smooth victories throughout the whole CrunchLabs Masters so far.
Yeah, this was very impressive opening preparation. Alireza showing that he's not just playing the London system in order to avoid theory. Quite the contrary, he's done his work in the London. He beat Bukesh with that opening in the candidates. So great opening prep, taking the game into the territory that he feels comfortable with, and then seamless conversion. I was really impressed with the move f4, David. Kind of the interplay between strategic decisions and tactical play, calculation, all of which were flawless. Really nothing but applause for Alireza. But there's another game to play, and this match ain't over.
It's not over, but it's must-win territory for Jan Nepomniachtchi, who you see in front of you on your screens, everyone. He needs to bring that energy that helped him defeat Magnus Carlsen in the previous round if he wants to stay in this tournament. And how cruel is that? You play a fantastic match, defeat one of your long-time kind of bogey players, your kryptonite, you defeat Magnus Carlsen, and then you get struck by such incredible opening prep. Danya, take it away. Where do you feel that moment he clinched it was for Firouzja?
Yeah, cruel indeed. Your gift, your present for defeating Magnus, not Dom Perignon, not a reception in the Royal Palace. No, you have to defeat Alireza Firouzja. Now your back is against the wall, and the reason his back is against the wall comes from the 14th move. It was some futuristic opening preparation. I mean, I was out of theory by move 5 in this game, but these players were blitzing out their moves. Both of them had over 10 minutes, more than the time that they started with, and this is move 14. And this is the critical moment where Jan is trying to decide where to put his knight. Apparently, the best move to maintain dynamic equality was the unappealing, like visually unassuming move knight a7, but here the knight actually does something. It hits the bishop. Later on, if the bishop moves, it can help jumpstart a pawn storm on the queen side, which is where black needs to attack. Instead, Jan plays the far more natural move knight to b4. But it turns out that his pieces kind of start stumbling over each other on the queen side. The bishop on b5 remains as stable as ever, and white starts developing really serious pressure against black's central pawns. This is what ultimately leads Jan to weaken his position decisively. Perhaps the critical moment, the moment where the game was decided, comes here. Rook h6 apparently maintained maybe a slightly worse position, but definitely very much tenable. Instead, Jan allows this powerful positional shot f4. Now he tries the same thing, but the difference is that the queen, in the event of rook g6, can actually hide behind the f4 pawn, and white has the obvious plan of applying slow, steady, but very serious pressure against the e6 pawn. Instead, Jan went headfirst into the complications, and he did not live to tell the tale. Alireza swaps the queens, but that does not diminish. No, that merely increases the strength of his attack, and it was a brilliant conversion, starting with bishop c4, setting up this lovely threat of the double rook sack with mate, forcing Nepo's king into the corner, and now using the queen side, demonstrating his total light square control, a classic back rank tactic, winning a pawn, and shortly thereafter winning one piece. Jan's pawn hurdles forward, trying to generate some counterplay. It's too late. It's not fast enough. It's not strong enough, and he doesn't have enough pieces. He's going to be left without any of them, so he resigns the game in this position. What a display by Alireza Firouzja. Total sea change, total 180 from his match against MBL yesterday, David, both in terms of the time management and in terms of his just general level of control over the course of the game.
That's right. He looked confident from move 1. We said it, really high accuracy game there. We got to shout out 96.4% accuracy. Not necessarily any brilliant moves, but just brilliant consistency behind his play. And jumping on the kind of opportunity he was given, that rook takes h2, allowing this kind of sequence of moves. The killer instinct has always been Firouzja's kind of main weapon in chess, and he really used it to full effect there. And what about this, Danya? Just looks like he's gazing out through the window, getting some fresh air, getting some oxygen, and He'll be back at the board in a moment. This is how the top players these days warm up.
Yep, usually with their hands behind their back. Nepo, he's pouring himself a cup of tea. He isn't too despondent. He knows that he's capable of winning on demand with the white pieces. That would force an Armageddon. Wow, this is, I mean, in case anybody wondered whether Alireza gets his 8 glasses of water a day, just the size of that bottle alone and the fact that there isn't too much water left in it, that should give us all the answers that we need. I think Jan needs a little water on his face, maybe. Could Alireza maybe spare some?
He definitely does, Jan Nepomniachtchi. He's meditating Jedi style almost. I need chat to help us out as well. Which sports jersey is that? Is it the Croatia national football team? Am I mistaken? The national soccer team even? Yeah, let us know in the chat. But Jan Nepomniachtchi, at some point, Jedi style, he will wake up, get those moves going. We're about to start game 2 of this losers final. What approach do you think he's going to take, Danya, in the opening?
Well, I mean, I think e4 is quite a bit likelier because Alireza does not have as clearly defined of a drawing weapon as Jan does. Now, Alireza has toyed with a Petrov himself, and it would be really funny if we saw the roles reversed. But Jan does not want to flirt with the possibility of a forcing line. He plays 1d4. And we will get a traditional Tarrasch. Not the most common guest at the top level today.
No, but one that Firouzja has been displaying with more and more regularity recently. He started playing it, I believe, in Norway chess, this kind of mainline Tarrasch, and he's got decent results. He had Hikaru Nakamura on the ropes in this opening. He employed it just a couple of days ago against Jan-Krzysztof Duda with a lot of success. And okay, Nepomniachtchi, clearly an opening expert, clearly done his homework. He grabs a pawn in the center, and this is critical stuff, Danya. I believe there's a lot of theory after the move bishop to e6. And okay, fascinating. Normally top players, they try and avoid theory if they're in must-win situations. But here, he's hurtling down one of the main lines of this opening.
This tells me that Nepo must be very, very confident in his preparation, that he must have prepared this line specifically against Alireza. And believe it or not, David, I actually think knight takes d5 comes as a surprise, which will be a surprising statement to most players unacquainted with this line. But I'm pretty sure that short castle is kind of automatically played. It's one of those situations where you just sort of assume that this pawn is too dangerous to capture. And these moves can be very dangerous because, of course, has Alireza studied this move? Absolutely. But maybe it's been a while since he's taken a look at his analysis. Maybe he's frantically trying to remember, wait a second, do I play bishop e6? Do I castle first? All of the move orders start kind of jumbling together in his head. So he takes a minute to gather himself. And now I think we're going to see another series of moves blitzed out by both players.
Yeah, and we see the blue. not from Firouzja, at least. He's definitely trying to recall his home cooking. Just like Mark Rober, he needs to engineer something here to kind of compensate for that pawn that he's just sacrificed. But really strange to see him thinking. The queen exchange, I think, is the most logical, at least. And when black recaptures the knight on b6, the a file will open up. That's the compensation you kind of usually get in these lines. This is the Dubov Tarrasch we should mention to everyone at home. And I think there have been courses on this. It's a really trendy line. So odd here, Danya. I've got to say, it's odd to see him thinking.
There are no other moves. I mean, upon closer inspection, he clearly was not thinking about queen takes d1. He clearly was kind of trying to remember his prep afterward. Jan continues to blitz out his moves. Now, normally I would call this an extremely dubious, or shall I say a dubovious choice in a must-win situation, but just the speed with which Jan is playing, it's making me hold my tongue because he must be more confident than Stockfish in the fact that he believes that his winning chances here are significant. Maybe he believes that Alireza has to string together a very precise sequence of moves. I think a lot of people forget that sometimes top players, they'll go into a line. Yes, they know it's equal, but they're essentially betting on the fact that their opponent either hasn't reviewed the line recently or they go into some relatively obscure channel where if you do not find all of the top moves, you're basically much worse and you're digging yourself into a big time deficit, which is exactly what's happening, David.
Yeah, it's the memory test technique. That's what they call it. The top players, when they just play an opening like this one, where the computer, you can guarantee Stockfish, probably a lot of engines, they'll say 0.0, it's level. Why would you even go down this route with white if you're seeking an advantage in a must-win situation? But as you said, it's a test. He's definitely asking Firouzja what you want to do next. You're highlighting knight before check. That's what Firouzja will be calculating. But
you do
is
not
it
go into
king
this without your
C1?
seatbelt fastened tight. You need a license to go into this position with white.
Yeah, I was thinking about stepping forward at first, but knight takes a2 check would have been extremely annoying. So king back to b1. It looks like you're getting mated, and bishop f5
What?
check is a huge threat now, but wow, it's an exchange sacrifice, Dania.
Oh my gosh, knight d4, the brazen play continues. Now you need a double license. You need to be a professional to go into this. Knight d4, allowing bishop takes a2 check. And of course, the point is that at the end of the line, either the knight will get trapped on a2, or you'll get this knight rook construction, and white will try to win a second minor piece. I just quickly wanted to show, if we could pull up an analysis board, I think it's very important, particularly for newer players who might be wondering, wait, isn't this literal checkmate? Not only is it not checkmate, but it essentially loses the game after e4. And all of it depends on concrete tempi. Knight takes e4. If black were already castled, white can resign. As it stands, the pin is stronger than the checkmate. You just cannot move the knight by the rules of the game. You have to get your king out of the pin. By the time you do, white simply recaptures this knight and wins an entire piece. But the crazier choice, David, is knight d4, allowing bishop takes a2 check. And after rook takes a2, rook takes a2, what does white play in this position? Apparently bishop d2 as well as knight to c2 essentially wins the game. So black has to take on a2 with a knight, and then we're going to get this position. And how on earth are you going to extricate your knight? I think this is an awesome choice by Jan.
Amazing. I'm learning. I'm taking notes. I'm going to be analyzing this variation a bit later today with the latest engines. Don't worry, everyone. But yeah, Firouzja, he's on his own. He's 5 minutes down on the clock. High pressure situation. Good luck working your way through this kind of labyrinth now.
Genius.
Dania, it's beyond the point of no return as well. He's committed. He's a pawn down, facing the bishop pair. He needs to go into that type of line and try to survive. It's so difficult for him already.
You know, the coach of the my hometown basketball team had a famous quote. He was asked, how do you feel about Steph Curry, you know, shooting these long-range three-pointers? And he basically just said, no, 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 yes, yes, yes. When the ball starts going into the basket, suddenly you feel like the guy was a genius for releasing it. And I feel exactly the same way. I will admit I was very skeptical when Jan went into this endgame. It looked scary. It looked unappealing. Now I look at this position, and honestly, I have no idea how black is supposed to equalize. Because, David, the problem isn't so much that white has a threat on the next move. The problem is that eventually he's going to round up this knight, and if he does, black can essentially resign, which tells me that Alireza has to create threats, and he has to create them quickly and meaningfully.
Yeah, and we should mention Alireza, with the black pieces this tournament, he has had some disasters. Everyone remembers that 9-move loss against Fabiano Caruana, but there have been other incidents as well where he's been struggling from an early stage, and that's going to be at the back of his mind. His black repertoire has been through the ringer this tournament. He's kind of kept himself afloat in the event by being really resourceful in difficult positions, but also just being devastatingly strong with white, and suddenly he's going to be... I mean, the emotions inside Dania, he's going to be boiling. It's going to be hard to even calculate. Even if he equalizes this position, he'll need accuracy. He'll be down to 10 seconds on the clock by then. And even if he gets that knight out, white is not risking that much. White has the bishop pair. White's going to win a pawn on b7 minimum. Beautiful knight on d4 now. Just protected outpost there. And yeah, this is beautiful in terms of practical play from Nepomniachtchi. He's had this up his sleeve for a long, long time. That's how much this game means to him. He's using a weapon he could have saved up for the future. He's using it here and now.
Crunch, crunch. And he's now 7 minutes up on the clock. He's over 10 minutes, which is absolutely mesmerizing to me. The concept that we're 18 moves in. This is not some mainline knight, or if we literally have a crazy unbalanced endgame, and he's got more time than he started with. Somehow eerily similar to that game against Benjamin Bach. I think somewhere Benjamin is getting ready to have a stern talking to with me for bringing up that game. But this is incredible. How deep does this preparation go? I've been in these shoes, in Alireza's shoes, in a classical game where you feel like there's no way that my opponent could have had this position on his computer. Yeah, welcome to modern chess, ladies and gents. Welcome to modern chess, Alireza Firouzja.
Yeah, this is the kind of the downside of not working with computers or working with computers when you just assume a position is level. You look at that 0.0 kind of evaluation and you make assumptions. Just like you, Daniel, I've been there so many times in my career where I just stop analyzing one move too early. Of course, that position arises on the board. The opponents look deeper and you just sit there beating yourself up mentally. It's like, why didn't I just click that spacebar one more time, figure out why this position is level? And I mean, he's down to 2 minutes against 10. Nepomniachtchi, clearly, this is just where his preparation begins. He knows exactly the plan next, whether that's King C2, King B3, or what it is.
Of part 2 of the file. And you're telling yourself, I couldn't save, episode 6 of that series I'm watching for the next day. I couldn't spend another 5 minutes looking at the central line. Look at the time situation. This might be the most lopsided time advantage, the biggest time advantage in maybe, I don't know, CCT history. It's almost a 9-minute edge, but that doesn't tell the whole story because the position remains very concrete. And clearly Alireza's problems are hypothetically solvable. The problem now, David, I think, is that you're so close. You're tantalizingly close to being able to extricate your knight from A2, but you still can't do it. Now the reason is that white has this move E4, separating the knights, and black cannot afford to lose a minor piece. This is very clear.
Yeah, and Rook D1, what a sophisticated move, by the way. Clearly helped by engine prep, but Rook D1 covers the white knight on D4 in that variation, Danya. That is just going to be a hammer blow to Firouzja's hopes. He wanted to extricate his knight, but if he can't, he's stuck back to the drawing board, back to square one. There's literally no obvious moves in this position, and he's got 1 minute left. We're going to see the eval bar swing, I think, any second. We both feel it. Firouzja feels it on the camera. Jan, I mean, not just the biggest time difference in the history of the Champions Chess Tour,
10 minutes and 10 seconds to 45 seconds. Are you kidding me? Is this an odds game of some sort? Is Alireza playing the Bullet Championship and Nepo's playing the CCT? This is unreal.
Speed Chess Championship versus Bullet Chess Championship. This is crazy stuff. Okay, he uses the other knight, but Black's knights, superfluous, we sometimes call them, but they're just clumsy as anything.
Nepo's doing him the favor of saying, let me pretend that I have 37 seconds too. I won't make you feel that bad. Hey, I don't think that there's any extra cash for finishing the game with over 10 minutes. So Nepo should slow down. I think finally, he's in unexplored territory. And that offers exactly no relief to Mr. Firouzja.
No, the white bishop, after feasting on a pawn, has retreated. Now the black knight on b4 is stuck. There were all sorts of knight jumps for white. Okay, at least he's kind of found a way to keep things together short-term, Danya. But what do you make of the long-term chances for black? It's going to be hard to even find a move.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of a temporary cessation of hostilities against these two knights. And I think that Nepo might as well take his talents to the other side of the board. The paradoxical thing is that he's not going to win the knight on the next move. And I don't think that that's going to be his priority. I think he's going to open a second front. He's going to start pushing his pawns and creating the precedent for potentially even an attack against Black's king. He's got a lot of pieces remaining, 3 minor pieces and a rook. So without the aid of Black's knights, Black's king could eventually get caught in the crossfire if White can send these pawns up the board. So that's one option. David, maybe there is a way to try to set up an ambush against these knights. Maybe you can slowly zigzag your bishop around to b3. What catches your eye here? How should Nepo prosecute this position?
Yeah, maybe a bit of both. I love both of your plans. I was actually looking at the latter plan there, how to get the white bishop to the b3 square. I think that's just great visualization technique for everyone at home. And there we go, bishop to e2. Where do you want to place your pieces ideally? It might take 3 or 4 moves, but you have time as a luxury here. h6 doesn't stop anything. Bishop round to b5. I was actually looking at like rook g1 or something, and then bishop d1, bishop b3. But that could have been prevented. Ooh, h4.
Lovely geometry, but okay. Nepo doesn't need any of his extra time. Keeps the foot on the gas pedal.
Everything you mentioned, Danya. The prophet is back. He's combining pawn pushes, mysterious pawn pushes, with this potential bishop maneuver later. G4 now. Why not? Black's doing precisely 0.
But, the skeptic inside of me says that and the cynic inside of me says that I've lost too many time scrambles to Alireza to count him out. The guy can play perfectly for unholy amounts of time with almost no time left on his clock. And so far, I have to say he's doing a pretty good job of, at the very least, making Nepo prove it. I think that Firouzja's goal, essentially for the rest of the game, should be a pretty modest one. You just want to make Nepo demonstrate some sort of a winning plan. You don't want to blunder a piece. You don't want to try anything ridiculous because Nepo has all of the time in the world to see past the cheap trick.
Yeah, and cheap tricks might include an idea like doubling rooks on the A file and later a knight c3 check type idea. But in the meantime, he won't get given that luxury. The white bishop hits that rook. It is weird. It's like this status quo that can't really be broken by either player. It's not clear what white's plan is to win the black knights. It's not clear what black's plan is at all, other than just keeping the knights where they stand. Okay, 7.5 minutes though against under 20 seconds. Jan, the correct strategy, right, should just be to maneuver, and then pose questions when Firouzja has no time.
Somehow this never works for me. Maneuver, and then when I look at a Karpov game or a Carlsen game, the win somehow just arrives on a big cruise ship with the words WIN marked in clear, big red text. But somehow when I try to do this, the win never comes and the blunder never comes. So Jan has to continue this sort of slow roll approach of pushing his pawns on the king side. I think he's doing a good job of it so far. But you mentioned tricks, David. Knight to c2, and suddenly the tentacles start winding around white's king. This game ain't over. And let me tell you one thing. Jan is not going to win this game on the clock. That cannot be his only weapon.
Yeah, Alireza Firouzja yesterday lost twice on time against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, but that was because his position was hopeless already. So this position's still in the balance. I love your knight c2, and the blue arrow appears. White has to keep the bishop pair. And suddenly the other knight might be hoping to get out. Okay, does he go back? If he goes back with this knight, this is the second time we've seen this position. Shake of the head from Firouzja, but he's still alive. He's fighting so well.
Yeah, this is where I would kind of get paranoid if I were Jan and just push g5 just to make sure that there's no 3-time repetition. There's 3 seconds on Firouzja's clock. He's flirting with a back rank checkmate as well, on top of all the other problems.
Oh, yeah, be careful. Back rank checkmate in the air. He's just about surviving. Bishop takes knight on b4. Black would take the light squared bishop, and the black king would then have the h7 square as an escape route. And tactics including bishop a3 don't quite work. The black knight will be able to extricate itself there. So
wow,
so lucky there, Firouzja.
David, I mean, who wouldn't see this with 4 seconds on the clock? And maybe he didn't see it. He's calculating it now and breathing a big sigh of relief, because in that line you mentioned, you actually cannot start with rook takes a3. Again, I don't have time to show this because the moment Jan makes a move, we're going to get another flurry. Let me tell you, the fact that Firouzja is even in this game is crazy to me. The whole narrative, the opening preparation, the glamour, all of that is pushed aside right now because the dirty work is yet to be done by Jan.
Yeah, still struggling to find that winning plan. Eventually he does fix the kingside pawn structure, and Firouzja, he's just going round and round the board, like round in circles almost with his rooks. He's got to be careful not to walk into a knight fork himself as black, but so far doing such a good job. He made that last move with under 2 seconds, but yeah, those bullet skills you keep referring to, Danya, he's showing them off right now. Ooh, b3?
Firouzja had some crazy tactics there with rook c8 and then knight c3, even in response to king b2.
Oh my gosh.
So apparently there was a chance for black to save himself, but Firouzja was probably hovering his rook over the e8 square. Still, Nepo has to be very careful here. He's walking on some landmines on the queen side.
It might still be there after f3, then black can try that rook c8 idea. Now Firouzja has some time to think while Jan is in the tank. So I wouldn't be surprised if that tactic happens in the near future.
Oh my God.
Maybe bishop f5 would have been a clever try, but no, he gives up the exchange. Oh, this is desperation though.
Huge bullet dodged by Jan. I think if Firouzja had maybe a minute on his clock, he would have found rook c8, and apparently the position very nearly equalizes. Now, I still don't think that white is winning in a clear-cut fashion, because what Alireza is doing is he's using the b4 square as the kind of conduit to finally get his knights out of the 7th ring of hell. If he can play knight ab4, white is technically up a pawn on the king side, but these pawns, they're doubled. They're certainly nothing that white is proud of. Jan has to keep his initiative going. How does he do it? Does he play knight b5? What catches your eye?
Yeah, I was looking at all sorts of knight jumps, knight b5, knight c6, try to solve this tactically. He's down to 4 minutes, Jan, so still plenty of time to calculate. There's not that many options, to be honest. White's pawns are stuck. White's bishop has no good squares. The rook doesn't necessarily want to move. The king can't move. So it's literally, I'm looking at knight moves, knight jumps. Not sure the most productive. Okay, I said the pawns can't move. He pushes his e-pawn. If the black knight captures that pawn, the other knight would have been trapped. So he's going hunting on the other side of the board for Firouzja. He's going back to e4 potentially, Danya. Still complicated.
Man, his knights they never stop. They're somehow not only still in the game, but they're making the most out of their terrible accommodations, somehow finding ways to cause white a massive headache. And Nepo's 9.5-minute time advantage, it seems like forever. It's not forever. He's starting to fritter it away. And let me tell you, if this actually gets into an all-out time scramble, just the psychological edge might become insurmountable. So I feel like Jan needs to seal the deal in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 moves, broadly speaking. Right now, he's got to decide where he puts the rook, because this knight is going to start mopping up some pawns. He goes rook e1. That's a weird move. Whoa.
Weird.
David, what are we what are we seeing here? Rook c7.
Oh God, he's walking
knight
to
f2.
the lion's den, and he's going to lose all of his pawns.
Oh
and
my
the other
God.
black knight is no longer trapped. He's blown at Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Is white going to be worse here if he's not careful? What in the world?
Knight f3. The other knight is somewhat trapped now on g4. I mean, this is such a crazy type of position.
Now we move to the king side. e6. Got to take it.
Okay, easy move there, but yeah,
still
under 5 seconds. Wow. Knight d3?
Wow. The only move to
knight
keep equality, king f3, he goes knight e5. And you can't go up to f4 because of the fork on d3. Oh
And
my
likewise,
goodness.
king d3, knight e5 as well, and white walks into more forks. Those knights never die. They're dancing all over the board.
But the bad part for Firouzja is he still has 1 second, and he still has an entire eternity of defending to do. He plays rook e7. That gives Jan essentially this nasty advantage with the pawn on e3. How did he get it to this situation? He had a tactic there with knight c4. Instead, he drops back to f7. I'm pessimistic. I still feel like Jan's winning chances here, given the time situation, are pretty high. At this point, I should probably just keep my mouth shut, because you cannot predict how the course of events is going to transpire. This is insane. How is he doing this?
He's staying alive with no time. 1 second. This whole game, pretty much, he's played with 2 seconds on his clock. But that trade of pawns, I was going to say, Danya, so just important for black. Now the black king is not going to get checkmated. Rook and bishop do work better than rook and knight, especially with a passed pawn in the e-file like this. But he's closer than ever to the value, to that invaluable draw and to match victory. But still, one slip, and that's all it would take.
But and I don't think he should have provoked the king forward. That was a hasty move. Alireza trying to kind of force the draw, but instead I think he's giving this king an outlet. The king escapes to d5, which is a much safer square than f5. Now it's not as susceptible to forks. Jan plays bishop b4, setting up the threat of e6, but allowing a check. And Alireza is going to get the bishop.
Wow.
Jan had to slow down there.
Huge mistake from Jan Nepomniachtchi. The bishop falls. This is a dead drawn rook endgame. And his chances have disappeared. Look at him on the camera, Danya. He's heartbroken.
And he had a chance there. Apparently, the move e6 straight away without the middleman would have given him a winning advantage. David, Alireza is going to pull this off. I cannot believe what I'm seeing.
And you've been saying it. He is the bullet chess champion for a reason. He's played this whole game with his knights trapped, his knights hanging, pieces flying all over the board with just 1 or 2 seconds left on the clock, playing purely on the increment, but working miracles, staying alive. BG style here. He's just working miracles, Alireza Firouzja, and he's going to get that rematch against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. This is a dead drawn rook endgame. You can tell on Jan Nepomniachtchi's body language. This is over. No more chance for white now.
And just to compound the pain, not only the pain of the lost match, but that preparation, that, let me just say it, there's no other way to say it, that was some sexy preparation by Jan Nepomniachtchi. He pulled out the mega candidates premium stuff. That's the super stuff that you would pay beaucoup bucks to get access to. He pulled that out for this game because he thought it important. He wanted to ensure victory. He did everything but the point. Alireza, I have no words for what we just witnessed. That was insane, David. That was epic.
That was crazy. Jan Nepomniachtchi immediately logs off, devastated. That's the only thing kind of worse than losing in chess is landing an opening bomb like that and still not backing it up, not winning. Like you said, top players in the world, they pay thousands for those types of opening ideas. And unfortunately for Jan Nepomniachtchi, that is the end of the road. It's confirmed. Alireza Firouzja progresses through the losers bracket just as he did in his successful Chess.com Classic campaign when he won the final against Magnus Carlsen. He'll get that opportunity. He'll have a rematch against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And yes, he might need to win twice, but he will back himself after today's resilient performance. And here we see the bracket. Danya, what a day of chess it's been. Totally different style of chess to the previous match with Magnus against Jan Nepomniachtchi. Alireza Firouzja living on the brink, but progressing.
Living on the brink, thriving on the brink. And I have to recompose myself, David, because it's still like what we just saw is rotating around in my mind. The opening preparation by Jan, just the sequence of events as they occurred one after the other. The fact that he had not even arguably, definitely the greatest, biggest, largest time advantage in CCT history. He was 9.5 minutes up on the clock with a close to technically winning position. 30 seconds left for Alireza Firouzja. None of that matters. Let me just hold the draw and play like an engine for 60 moves and get to the final to challenge Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. This game review can take me hours. I don't have the time for that, so let me just hit on the important points. Alireza started out with a traditional tirage. Now, David, you pointed out that he has been playing this opening, so this was definitely on Jan Nepomniachtchi's radar, and Jan brings out some mega prep. They go into this line, and Jan grabs the pawn on d5. Not the most popular move. Castles is often considered kind of automatic. Instead, he tests Alireza in this very principled move, knight takes d5. The queens are swapped early, and up comes White's king. This is Jan Nepomniachtchi's moment of glory. The king slides back to b1, blundering checkmate in one move. Nope, just kidding. Bishop f5, e4 is a crucial tactical subtlety that gives White the tempo that he needs in order to centralize his knight. But that's another blunder. He simply gives up the a2 pawn, and he gives up the exchange. No, it's not. Now, he does give up the exchange, but it is far from a blunder. It is a stroke of preparational genius. Rook takes a2, and suddenly it turns out that Black cannot take the desired way because of the simple bishop d2, and Black will simply lose the knight. And so the knight has to enter the dungeon with knight takes a2, where it is summarily trapped after bishop d2. It has no way back, can't go back to b4, and Jan has tremendous compensation. Not only is the knight essentially trapped, but White has the bishop pair, the pawns are weak, and the most important thing, in just a couple more moves, it was 10 minutes against 30 seconds. Jan has more time than he started with. Alireza with mere seconds to save a seemingly unsalvageable position, and here the real journey began. Alireza wouldn't budge. He went back and forth. He found all the right squares for the rook, and initially Jan was pressing all the right buttons as well. He was advancing his kingside pawns, but around here, things started to go wrong. Jan just couldn't quite find the desired piece arrangement. He started letting Alireza's knights get a little bit more active, get a little bit more breathing room. He went back on the right track briefly. Things seemed to be going well for him, and then suddenly, this was the key moment, bishop f5 would have restricted Black from accessing the c8 square. This would have been very important. Instead, he played f3, enabling Alireza to sack the exchange back and finally start evacuating his knights. He got one knight out of there. He got it out through f2, and then back to e4. Rook e1 there was a big mistake. Suddenly, the knights become the heroes of the game rather than being the victims of the game. He takes on g4, restoring material equality. The game continues to liquidate, but Nepo would have one more chance. He manages to get a small advantage with a bishop versus knight situation, but he rushes. He still, after all this time, has a big time advantage. It's 2 minutes to 5 seconds, and in this position, he should have taken a little bit longer, but it's easy to say. He got impatient, or he got too patient, rather, because the immediate e6 would have given him a nearly winning position. Black just is unable to deliver perpetual against White's king because the king drops back to e5 or forward to c7, depending on where the knight goes. Instead, Jan played one more preparatory move than necessary, allowing Firouzja to give up his other knight in a fit of final glory. Knight e3 check, forcing the king back and enabling the skewer, getting the minor pieces off the board, and the rest is an easy task. Black is not even worse here. Alireza manages to do the unthinkable. He draws the game. He wins the match. What an epic moment. What an epic game, David. Wow. Hats off.
Yeah, hats off. An incredible moment. So many twists and turns in that game. We were on the edge of our seats for the entirety as Alireza Firouzja lived life on the brink. And his creativity, his ingenuity there is fitting in light of chess.com's partnership for the CrunchLabs Masters with famous YouTuber and former NASA engineer Mark Rober. CrunchLabs, it's an educational STEM toy subscription box company. Available internationally are now the Build Box and the Hack Pack. And Danya, do you think the Hack Pack is a life hack? And do you feel that the problem solving that Alireza Firouzja had to go through there, do you think there's kind of any crossover there?
I don't think he needs that. He can assemble that hack pack with his mind. Just the power of his mind can assemble, and he can probably set the world record in terms of time spent assembling it. Because if you can save the position that he just saved with 5 seconds, then you can engineer whatever you put your mind to. Well, he will need to continue engineering his incredible run through the losers bracket because he needs to win 2 more matches against his fellow Frenchman, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. But the kind of moxie, the kind of mojo, just the kind of gumption and skill that Alireza has demonstrated today, if he can carry that forward, then he's got a shot. And wow, I'm speechless. It was just an honor to watch this display. But the final boss will still await him.
Yeah, and for the viewers at home who have stuck with us this whole time, whether you're new to coding, a master coder, or master builder, go and check out some of these hack packs, the build boxes. The first 500 people can claim $32 off an annual subscription to either Build Box or Hack Pack. Use !CrunchLabs or visit go.chess.com/CrunchLabs to claim your offer. What a game we just had. What a losers bracket we've just seen throughout the whole of these last couple of rounds. We've seen Magnus Carlsen eliminated, now Jan Nepomniachtchi eliminated. It is Alireza Firouzja triumphant in the losers bracket. Tomorrow, or the day after, he will face his countryman, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and will be joined by the winner for an interview very shortly.
I'm Levi Rosman, and I have the privilege of being joined by none other than Vishy Anand, 5-time world champion, absolute legend of the game. Thank you so much. Well, your official capacity here is commentator or deputy president. Which one are you?
I'm here principally as a commentator, but I'm also deputy president, so...
So if 2 players at this event start punching each other and you have to make some sort of big decision, it's on you.
I suppose yes, but first it'll go to the arbiters.
How much did you have to sacrifice throughout your career?
Not really, but the thing is, it never felt like a sacrifice. It felt like something you have to do in the same way that you have to sacrifice a pawn, sacrifice a piece in order to get somewhere. It just felt like, of course I have to take this seriously to do well, but if I do well, I'll feel happier later. It seemed very immediate.
Did you like school?
By now, I remember that having enjoyed it immensely, but I think that's just your memory playing tricks. On a day-to-day basis, I suspect, now everything about my youth seems fantastic. I mean, at that age, everything seems full of promise. I must say I'm quite privileged. I had a blast the whole time, and I can't complain. I suspect these youngsters have their own favorite things about chess, but they must be having just as intense an experience.
And you can feel free to be as arrogant as you'd like, as not humble as you like. Because are you an A-list celebrity in India, like an A-list athlete?
I think in terms of being recognized or my name meaning something, the thing is my name has been on school textbooks.
Yeah.
I get recognized even more now than before. And I think it's this new audience that I'm saying. People who are still far from the game, but not as far as they used to be. Arrogant enough?
What were your expectations going into the 2013 match?
It's hard for me to believe that I didn't think I'd at least have some chances. And I always thought as long as I could settle into the match and play and, you know, do the things the way I normally do it, and I don't see why I shouldn't have a chance. I found it impossible to disregard his strength, and the hardest thing was simply seeing his results against others and my results against others, and realizing at some point you can't ignore that data point. He's winning way too many games against everyone else, and I'm not.
Hundreds of thousands of kids have used the CrunchLabs Build Box to learn how to create and build stuff while having a ton of fun at the same time. But what about something for teenagers and adults, where they can learn all the tools and tricks I use to create the builds on my channel? Well, I'm happy to say, starting today, that exists now. And this is it. It's called Hackpack, and it's basically a series of really fun programmable robots that get delivered right to your door, where we build it together and learn step by step the kinds of engineering skills that go into making the builds on my channel. And don't be intimidated, because all these use a programmable microcontroller as the brain. Because if you can put together a Lego set, you can put together this. And it will work right out of the box. No programming required, and it will still be really fun. Heck yeah.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to coverage of Division 1 of the CrunchLabs Masters, where we're joined by the man of the moment, the winner of the losers bracket today, Alireza Firouzja. Alireza, congratulations.
Thank you.
And yeah, it was a short day for you, but a successful one with some twists and turns. What are your first feelings about today's games?
Yeah, I think it was a very theoretical match. I mean, first game, it was my preparation from the Grand Chess Tour tournament. I played against him, and the second game, for sure, it was something he wanted to play against classical against me. So good, I faced it in this rapid tournament, and I managed to not lose.
Yeah, that especially in the second game, the preparation. I mean, how scared were you feeling at the time with a knight on a2? Jan still had 10 minutes after 20 moves, 9.5 minutes down on the clock. What was going through your mind?
Yeah, I had this line like in back of my mind, like I had to just remember, but I had so little time. But for sure I checked this line, but I just couldn't remember. It's so rare to play for white, but it's a very good try, of course. And I mean, I was not so shocked that my knight is suddenly on a2, because I've seen these positions before, but I just didn't have so much time to remember the correct moves. So, and then I decided to play on my own, and I got first position.
But still very impressive that you kept control for 50, 60 moves with just a few seconds on your clock. What do you feel makes you so good under time pressure?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to bullet, playing a lot of bullet, and if you're good at bullet, I'm sure you can survive for a few moves. So also, Jan didn't put the maximum pressure, of course. He tried to be clever, of course, but my position is kind of is kind of endgame, so it's like it's not so tough to play. It's not like queens are on the board and everything. So.
And is that your tip for everyone at home learning to play under time pressure? Is it just bullet chess? Is it just as many games as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing bullet chess for my whole life, so it should count somewhere.
And Alireza, by winning today, that means you get a rematch. You get to play Maxime Vachier-Lagrave again, and potentially 2 sets in that final. What do you feel you need to do differently this time to beat him?
Yeah, I think Maxime is very well prepared in this tournament. I think he also cares more than everybody else about this tournament. So he's very well prepared. I have to prepare next time because I'm on vacation, so I didn't have time to prepare. So hopefully I could find some time to prepare against him.
I didn't realize. Are you allowed to tell us where you are on vacation?
No, it's very small town, so if I say I don't know what will happen.
Okay. And so now you have a day off to prepare. Is that what you're going to be up to then? Are you going to be chilling on the beach, or are you going to be studying a bit of chess?
Yeah, I mean, tomorrow I'm going to rest, of course, but maybe if I could find time 1-2 hours before the game, I will try to work here.
Okay, and we'll let you go in a minute, but just a couple of quick questions from our chat. SLE6 asks, Alireza, what goes through your mind when you have only 10 seconds left on the clock?
And I try to just focus and not to think about nonsense, because in 10 seconds, if you think about other things, it's no time. So mostly I try to just keep my head in the position. That's the most important, to not get distracted.
Good advice. And PP in Pampas, interesting username, asks, why the Croatian football jersey?
Yeah, they gave us this jersey in Croatia Grand Store, so just the most accessible. So, but I like the team. I like the team also. So
a very good team. They always seem to beat England whenever they play. Is there a number or name on the back?
Yeah, it's my name actually.
Ah, nice. Even better. Seems to have brought you luck as well. So many congratulations, Alireza. We'll let you go and enjoy your holiday.
Thank you.
Well done today. Well done. And there we have it. We see the bracket for Division 1. We get the 2 players in the final, and it's an all-French affair. Danya, just a man in form. He seemed happy, he seems confident, and he seems determined to try and get revenge.
He seems like the right mix of relaxed and motivated. You have to be relaxed. You have to put things into perspective. And I just love the way that Alireza bounced back after the match yesterday, because it's so easy to start spinning the narrative. This is what he's doing wrong. His time management is bad. He's lost confidence. He's back to candidates, Alireza. And he takes that narrative and he throws it into the trash can. He turns it on its head. And he really came through today in a big way. Obviously, a big shout out to Jan Nepo for knocking out Magnus Carlsen, putting up a valiant fight. There are so many demons and sharks in the losers bracket. To make your way through all of them and to make your way through the grand final, that takes a real wizard. We'll see if Alireza has what it takes. Wow, did these 2 hours go by quickly, David?
Yeah, they flew past Danya. So much action and all packed into a short amount of time. And we should mention, Alireza has done it before. In the last event, Chess.com Classic, he beat Magnus Carlsen twice in the grand final. He got the job done. So he'll be running full of confidence on the back of that. In the meantime, though, this wasn't the only chess being played today. We also have Division 2. And you mentioned packed full of sharks, Danya. Division 2 equally packed full of world-class chess talent. There we see in the grand final, which will occur tomorrow, it was Vidit who defeated a bunch of extremely strong players. There we saw in the winners final, he knocked Grishuk down, and also defeating Fedoseev and Rasmus Svana along the way. And it will be Vidit waiting in the final. He will face either Alexander Grishuk or Hikaru Nakamura, who are currently, I believe, battling in the losers final. Danya, I mean, it's a who's who of chess.
Oh my gosh, man. That match, Hikaru versus Grishuk, it just started. So the entertainment continues, and the entertainment will continue in a big way with a candidates rematch either way. I mean, Grishuk has played in the candidates as well. Man, this is the great thing about the CCT. Obviously, Division 1, so much intrigue. But for so many of these GMs, an opportunity, even if they didn't win in the play-in, to really go on a journey that gives them a lot of money and gives them a lot of memorable matches. And it's going to be awesome across all 3 divisions, David.
Yeah, the money is a bonus, plenty of pride on the line. And remember, tour points, the all valuable points will potentially guide some of these players into the tour finals come the end of the year. And not just Division 2, Division 3 was also in play today with further world-class talent on show. Look at this mammoth bracket. We don't have time to go through all the names, but some world-class players there and a real fight along the way. Look at that. I mean, we mentioned Dubov earlier. There's Owen Lamy. Bortnik is playing, a good friend of yours, of course. And in the grand final, it is Arjun Erigaisi. He has qualified. He defeated Alexeyev in the winners final, knocking Alexeyev down to the losers bracket. And he will await the winner, Arjun Erigaisi, of the losers final. Just incredible. We have literally a world top 10 player playing down in Division 3, Dania.
Yeah, you're looking and you're like, okay, well, probably we're going to get some, CMs and FMs. No, wait, all of these players are actually GMs in Division 3. Wait a second, Arjun Erigaisi, where have I heard that name before? Oh, live ratings. Wait a second, he's world number 4. So, this is the beauty of it. If you're a regular GM, if you're a 2600 just trying to earn your bread, not so fast. As you look at all these names, Jaime Santos Latasa, that should be a familiar name to any studious chess fan who watches tournaments. Yevgeny Alexeyev, he was over 2700 at his peak. So we get chess GMs from generations young and old, from the new crop of new talent, from the old crop of new talent, any old crop of talent, and lots of talent on display today, especially by Alireza Firouzja. But he'll have to carry that talent forward through 2 more matches because Maxime Vachier-Lagrave stands in the way. I cannot wait for the final.
Oh, that's right. I can't wait either, Dania. It's going to be a lot of fun to follow what occurs in the rest of this event. And just to round things off, I want to ask for one final thought from you. What was the highlight of the day?
Well, it almost feels like the fact that Nepo knocked out Magnus, that occurred yesterday. That occurred on a different day. No, that was also today. But ultimately, you have to take your hat off for Alireza Firouzja. Ever since the candidates, he's been on a tear. He's demonstrated a lot of confidence, newfound skills, sort of a more multifaceted approach to chess. I think he's building up part 2. I think he's setting himself up for success, of course, in the classical arena, but also in the meantime, in the arena of online and over-the-board blitz, where he has absolutely dominated. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus Alireza Firouzja. What could be more iconic, David?
That's right. The French derby in the final, the grand final of Division 1, as we see Firouzja leveling up. It's been a fun day of chess, a great day of chess. Dania, it's been great to be here with you, the D-Squared chess team. And I hope everyone at home who stuck with us this whole time has enjoyed it just as much as we have. It is Maxime Vachier-Lagrave against Alireza Firouzja in the grand final in a couple of days' time. Division 2 and 3 have their grand finals tomorrow. So join us again tomorrow, 11 a.m. ET, 5 p.m. Central European time, and see you soon.